I would like Ken Webster to lead the prayer, please.
At this difficult time for local government, we pray for the members of this council and the officers and our chairman, Councillor Cecile Irving-Swift. We pray for those affected by this heat wave and for sensible ways forward in our planning laws, including the provision of open spaces and ways to prevent runoff from too many concrete surfaces. We pray that we may all have a time of refreshment this summer and that it will rain soon. Amen. Amen.
The meeting. Is it okay if I sign the minutes of the last council? Apology of that, please. Thank you so much. For 10 seconds. Declaration of member interest. No. And if during the debate you realize you have not been interested. About the chairman announcements, you all have seen what I've been up to, so I will not carry on too long. I would like to flag a few things that I'm going to raise money. There is a visit at Compton next month, and the month after there is a visit at Kenmount Hall. Because my charity, two of my charities, one is the National Gun Scheme, I think it would be good to promote beautiful things in our district, and Compton and Kenmount are in our district great attraction, and it's a private visit that is organized for us. So if you would like to come, just call Fiona Rye, and she will happily put you on the list to visit those two wonderful gardens. Also in September, if you are willing, I will give you some raffle to sell, because I will have a raffle for Christmas, and it will be turkey, champagne, everything for your Christmas supper. So please, and that is to raise money for my two charities. And at the moment, I have raised just over £700. So I'm just a little way up. I don't have a barometer, but I would like, because I want to do quite well this year for those two wonderful charities. Thank you. Now, question on the council procedure rule 10 and 11. So, question from the member of the vote. So question number 1, Mr. Brian Morris. Is Mr. Brian Morris here? Please, would you like to read your questions?
Okay. Site 5 retail development at the bottom of Ashby Road comes with a price which is the removal of the free-flowing roundabout, the removal of the convenient pedestrian underpasses, and the removal of a considerable number of mature trees. It may be that the residents view this as an acceptable price to pay for the shops that will be provided. But which shops will they be? Certainly not Toys R Us, Mapton or VHS, which had ceased trading. Nor would I suggest M&S, Sainsbury, House of Fraser, Mothercare, Europe, Claire's, Pixel or Panwell, who are all cutting back and closing stores nationwide. Daventry's already lost its NatWest Bank and a couple of pubs. Homebase and Carpet-Rite are due to close some of their stores, so maybe we will lose them also. So my questions. Could Daventry District Council give an update on the current situation regarding the tenants for the new stores? Will Daventry District Council give an assurance that work on the site will not be started until the necessary number of tenants definitely exist? And will Daventry District Council give an assurance that the retail area will not be built at the local expense noted above, only for the stores to stand empty, thereby inconveniencing some and benefiting nobody?
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank Mr Morris for his question and thank Mr Deeser for the question. I should say first, I believe the vast majority of people will welcome the removal of the underpasses and the replacement by surface crossings, which I think people much prefer than going under underpasses. People generally find these far more comfortable to use. Tending to Mr Morris's main point, Henry Boot will not commit the £20 million required until it has sufficient tenants signed up to make the scheme viable. Therefore, I can with confidence give the assurances Mr Morris is seeking. Thank you, Chairman.
Question number 2, Mrs. Sue Myers.
Thank you. Can it also be suggested I asked about loop system, if there's a better place for me to sit, because I'm not hearing you. I don't know. Anyway, not to
You should
worry
be
now.
fine, I have
Yeah.
been told.
Yes, thank you. My question is about Long Buckby Library. Long Buckby Library is a valued community hub for Long Buckby and its surrounding villages. It is now threatened with closure. There is a well-organised group of volunteers anxious to keep it running. I emailed the district councillors for Long Buckby on the 10th of July regarding this issue, but have received no response. At a meeting on July the 9th, Long Buckby Parish Council announced its intention to purchase the Long Buckby Library building if Daventry District Council contributes half the cost. The total cost is estimated £25,000 plus VAT. I would like sorry?
250,000.
250,000, sorry, yeah. I would like to ask the leader of the council if he can update us on the council's response to this suggestion.
Thank you indeed, Chairman. Well, first of all, can I thank Sue Myers for the question. Funnily enough, actually, I got hold of the waitress the other day by a Long Buckby Library, friend of the library, Long Buckby. We had a very good discussion there about what's going on. And probably one of the reasons why you haven't had a response from the local councillors, including myself, Councillor Osborne and Councillor Longley, is because there's ongoing discussion about the future Long Buckby Library. What's been proposed initially was a sum of 300,000, I was told, 150 from this council, 150 from the parish council. But when you think about it, this building will become part of the new unitary in probably about 2 years' time. So you're buying a building to only then go into the new unitary, in which case it would cost nothing for that new unitary to inherit the building. So what we are looking to do, I had a discussion today with the Commissioner about, and also trying to get hold of the main officer who's actually in Birmingham on the appeal on the library judicial review at the moment, the library's judicial review which is taking place in Birmingham today and tomorrow. So we are going to organise a meeting very soon to talk about how we can actually try and keep Long Buckby Library going. And we'll do our very best to try and do that. And in particular over the interim period up to the unitary taking place in 2020 or 2021, depending on what happens. So I hope that answers your question. There's plenty going on, but one of the things we don't want to do is go out publicly all the time saying what's going on until we make some progress. And we are making progress in discussions at the moment to see there's a way forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Colin Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Unaccustomed as I am to speaking, I might be hesitant. I do apologise for submitting 3 questions. However, I thought they were all connected. I thank you, Madam Chairman, for your most courteous telephone call advising me of the Constitution. Back to the question. Due to lack of information in the media regarding the subject, I felt it was my duty as a stakeholder to attend a further Barrett's Pegasus consultation presentation regarding the North East Pursuit. As a member of the public, noting the lack of local members in attendance at the same time. Interesting, they still looked at the options of that site, but a school, also with or without a canal. even though a canal would give the whole site an uplift of tens of millions of pounds. I asked when we would see a planning application. Soon was the reply. I added to the above North East Zoo just announced, or I added to the above North East Zoo, I beg your pardon, just announced a further 300 dwellings on Eastern Way that have been withdrawn, plus no action on Micklewell. And having fought for probably the last 10 years for the protection of our villages, my question to the leader, with a 5-year land supply under threat, when will we see this application? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. And what a pleasure it is to see you come and fall back in the chamber. In response to your question, thank you for the question. I cannot give a date, which you probably be aware of, because when we're in your portfolio role, you know, we can't tell developers when to submit applications. But we're always getting told the application is on its way. What I would say is that the North East Urban Extension Planning application will be submitted at some point, but we don't know when. That's in the hands of Barretts and Davises, the developers. They've given every indication of wishing to submit, but clearly have not been able to do so yet. Officers and Homes England, and we had a discussion the other day about that, are proceeding this with them. So we're trying to exercise pressure on them to get the application in. As at the 1st of April 2018, the Council could demonstrate a 6.6-year housing supply of housing land. The Daventry North East allocation makes a contribution to that supply, but meaningful delivery rates are not expected from that site in the next 5 years. So only 200 dwellings, 60 in 21-22, 140 in 22-23 are expected. If these completions were not to happen, we would still have a 6.2 year land supply, comfortably in excess of the 5-year requirement. Thank you, Chairman.
Question from Councillor Wendy Randall, please.
Thank you, Chairman. At the council meeting on the 16th of May, I asked why some representatives on outside bodies had not submitted written reports. In response, the monitoring officer advised that the council that written reports were a recommendation and not an obligation. Good practice, but not necessarily needs to be done, the formal position. The minutes of the council meeting on the 17th of May 2017 record that it was resolved that the representatives on each body must submit a written report in respect of the activities thereof at the end of the year 2017-18 or earlier if the issues are of interest of importance to other members. The council was therefore misled by the monitoring officer. Will you now write to those who were representatives on outside bodies in 2017-18 asking to submit reports if they have not already done so? In recording of the council meeting of May 2017, you will find that the obligation on representatives to report was not confined to 17-18 as suggested by the minutes. Will you therefore write to present representatives reminding them of their obligation to report?
Councillor Miller,
Thank you,
please.
Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Ramble for her question or questions. Can I just say, at the meeting I believe the monitoring officer was summarising the legal position in that there is no obligation or requirement in law or in our standing orders for such reporting back, irrespective of the Council's previous resolution. There is no breach of law or legal procedure. As you know, the fact that some councils have not complied with the previous resolution is unfortunate but not legally procedurally enforceable, unlike, say, for officers under disciplinary procedures, rather than its good intent. But I always say to members, if members want to know, contact the members direct. You've all got emails, you've all got a telephone, and if you have a particular interest in an outside body, you can always write to members and ask the questions you want to ask. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor
Chairman, can I just ask a supplementary on that?
yes, please.
I did anticipate this might be the response that I would have received. So what I can't understand is that why did the monitoring officer allow us to debate and pass a motion that was beyond our powers, and why did he not point this out when at the following meeting we accepted minutes recording our decision? If we have the power to appoint members to be our representatives on outside bodies, then surely we have the power to recall them. Will you ask those representatives who are not prepared to comply with the Council's request for reports to resign their positions so that we can appoint members who make a commitment to reporting?
Well, I was going to say, Chairman, I'm not sure I'm in a position to answer the monitor officer. Maybe that's for you, Chairman.
I would ask clarification from our monitoring officer, please.
Yeah, obviously, Chairman, I'm personally involved in this,
Yeah.
so I'll be to the point as much as I need to be, rather than go into any expansive detail. It is within the Council's gift, within its powers to make such a resolution. But my point was, it's not enforceable. I can't enforce it, the exec can't enforce it, it's a matter for members to manage themselves. If it was a member of staff who was required to follow through a resolution, we have procedures where we can make sure that happens. It's completely different. But in law, under the Constitution, I cannot compel members to provide those reports, despite the resolution which was within your gift to make.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Richard White, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am confident that implementing the new arrangements for a refuse collection with Daventry North will deliver a much superior service for our community. I recognise also that in setting up any new operation, there is a likelihood of initial teething troubles to be worked through. However, I am experiencing a regular theme in constituent queries currently, to the extent that it's the biggest single source of complaint that I am getting, and that is that members of the public try to contact the Council and or Daventry North with requests or questions but receive no reply at all. I think, Madam Chairman, that needs to be emphasised. It is not the case that people receive answers that they don't agree with or don't like. They just don't get anything back at all. There is silence, not even an automated response. So could the leader please therefore advise what the current situation is in terms of responses to contact by the public coming in at Daventry North? Secondly, are calls and emails logged? And if so, what are the response time statistics and could these be published? And thirdly, if there are no formal performance indicators for this important public service, what consideration can be given to introducing them urgently?
Madam Chairman, thank you, Steve, for that. I'm just going to suggest that maybe I have got a response ready, but I thought as Councillor Guildford's here, who's the portfolio holder responsible for this area, it might be better if Councillor Guildford gives you a more full response.
Please, Councillor.
I thank Councillor Middlewright for his question. I share his confidence that the move to Daventry North will help produce a service with benefits for our residents, and also his concerns about the difficulties being encountered. I'm aware too that there's issues not just within your own ward, but other wards as well, and officers are doing all they can do to address them. There is a meeting with the Daventry North Board and the Liaison Board tomorrow, at which I will ensure these matters will be further discussed and actions agreed. In relation to the targets, the specification requires Daventry North to reply to all Stage 1 complaints within 5 business days, unless this is impractical, in which case it must give a holding reply and respond substantively as soon as practical. I will raise this at the board tomorrow. Incoming messages are logged on the Council's CRM system, which Daventry North has access to. Complaints and the complaint statistics are provided to all members quarterly by ward and portfolio. So once we get those statistics, we will interrogate them, and as I say, I will raise these issues at the board on the topic tomorrow. Thank you.
Councillor White, please.
Thank you. Can I ask a supplementary though? Could I just first of all just make the point that the query I asked was about communication, not necessarily complaints. So while some of them may be complaints, some of them were simple requests that have any wheelie bin on, things like that. They're not a complaint. So the complaints procedure I don't think is directly relevant. Secondly, I'm glad to hear that something is to be discussed and hopefully sorted out at the board meeting tomorrow. I would ask, would it be possible, please, for whatever decision is taken there to be made available to all members of the council, either by report at the next council meeting or through an email in the interim?
Yes, I think we need to respond to that request.
Thank you so much. Now, I will go to item 7, motion on the council procedure rule 12. Councillor Wheeler, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to start off by saying that this council recognises the excellent and crucial work undertaken by Reach for Health which is the operating name of Daventry Health Rehabilitation Trust, a registered charity, and which provides health rehabilitation to people who have suffered a major health trauma or are living with long-term or lifelong illness. This charity has been able to establish itself with currently some 2,400 users visits per month, excluding those that attend specialist classes that they operate, and has substantial recognition from local GPs and hospitals. This is a unique facility, Madam Chairman, which many members of this council have been to visit and seen the excellent work that goes on, and where demand for its services is growing year on year, and which is now facing a situation that may well threaten the future continuation of the charity and all the benefits it provides. Their existing premises in High March, Daventry are fairly old, expensive to operate, and rapidly becoming too small for the continued increases in demand for their current services, with plans to expand their cardio rehab, COPD and stroke programmes, which are carried out in conjunction with Northampton General Hospital. They've already reached agreement on the potential location of a new building located on the north-east corner of the Daventry District Sports Trust site in Western Avenue, Daventry, which will provide a sustainable future for the future health and well-being for our residents, both in the town and surrounding countryside and district. This council therefore resolves that its officers report back to the next strategy group meeting in September on options available to the council, conducting due diligence checks as usual to help achieve the completion of this new centre by July 2020. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have a second? He's already, Councillor Hall. Would you like to speak?
Yes, can I go?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's just really, I had an opportunity to visit the centre and doing inspiring work, to be fair, by inspiring individuals. I don't think there's any greater thing we can do in the community is to help those in greatest of need. And the team that work down there do that with great panache and great style, and looking at some of the individuals who are actually benefiting from the facility. It was a very humbling experience. I think we're in a unique position in this council, and maybe in a position whereby we can help this facility in the future, and for it to continue doing its vital work for the most vulnerable in our society. Thank you very much.
Councillor Whitford, please.
For those of you that don't know, in the day I work in the NHS, and I took an opportunity to canvass a few of my patients and the GPs themselves to ask them about the facility, and they advised me it's a very much valued facility that they do refer resident patients through to, and therefore I support this facility.
Thank you. I would like to ask Councillor, and now because I do not remember your name, I don't have my paper, and you are new or fairly
Yes, Councillor Dabbs.
Dabbs, yes, it's what I thought, but I didn't want to say another word. So please do.
Thank you, Chair. You'll remember me soon, I'm sure.
Next time it will not happen. Do not worry.
Right. Okay, I was surprised, but rather delighted to see this motion proposed. I am myself a user of Reach for Health, even though I'm in reasonable physical health. But many people, such as my wife and many of her friends at Reach for Health, are carrying various levels of disability. The specialised help that Raj and his team, and Raj and some of his team are over there, provide, the help that they provide is a lifesaver for those concerned. I'd like to emphasise that Reach for Health is important for many members, not only for their physical well-being, but for their mental well-being. Aside from the actual exercise, it's a vibrant community of like-minded people, and as I've said, some have significant physical issues, others less so, but all are mutually supportive of each other, and so the gym, as we like to call it, becomes much more than just a place of exercise. It's a place of support, it's a community. On this motion and follow-up, I do hope that DDC can provide much more than just one word of support. The potential move to better premises will be of great benefit to the gym members and wider public if more facilities can be provided. One point I'd like to make is the current access on High March is pretty awful for anybody who cannot drive. There's a massive lack of drop curbs on the estate. I counted them up reasonably recently. I think there was about 20 that will be needed. It's usually chock full of cars, and in addition you have large articulated lorries weaving around, so driving up the road with your mobility scooter is highly dangerous. And I would hope and expect to move to Western Avenue will resolve the issues, and I strongly support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I totally support this motion. I've been involved with Reach for Health within my portfolio over several years. I had the job of getting members into the Reach for Health premises to see what was going on and what it was like. We had a reasonably good attendance. I would like to have had more, because I think it would have opened some of the members' eyes. I'm hoping that they will support this. It came home to me very much only about a week ago. A neighbour opposite had a stroke going back a couple of months ago, and he was a founder member of our Residents Association, and I kept in touch. I popped over every now and again to see how he was. I left it a couple of weeks, and I went over and asked his wife how he was. She said, "You won't recognise him. He's 10 times better than he was." I said, "What has he done?" "Well, he's going to the gym this afternoon. He goes to Reach for Health. He can't speak highly enough of them." Now, they were the reports that I got when I spoke to people outside, but it was nice to have it confirmed. So I would ask each and every one of you to support this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ritchie, I hadn't forgotten you. Know your name.
Chair, it just occurred to me, perhaps I, and there might be others in the same position, should declare an interest that my wife is a regular user of the centre. You're ruling, but I trust that will not prevent us from voting in favour of this motion.
Well, I will ask clarification from the neighbouring officer.
So it's in the sense of having been a user previously, current for that matter. Right? There's no peculiar interest, let's make that clear straight away by the sound of that. I'd like to have interest sorted out before meetings as a general point, so it's difficult for me to always resolve here and now. It doesn't sound like to me that you would have something particularly beneficial to gain necessarily from this motion's outcome. I think we'll have a conversation before the report comes out next time, which is if the motion is carried, it recommends a report to strategy group. So we need to have a conversation a bit more than perhaps.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's obvious that I might be interested in this subject. I know nothing about Reach for Health. How can I find out more about it?
You will have more information in the strategy group report.
Thank you.
Come back at the end of that.
Would you like-
I'll sum up at the end.
Yes. No more speakers? So, Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say, actually, on Councillor Charter's point there, I mean, Alan Charter can always have a visit if he wants to go and see it. I'm sure that that can be made available, like a number of members have been there to see it, Councillor Charter. And I think you'd be very, very impressed by what you see. And the key about this motion is we're trying to find a sustainable way forward, because this council may only be here for 2 more years, and I think it's quite good, one of the good footnotes to actually put this in place before we go, to make sure we do something for other generations in the future to actually benefit from. I'm very encouraged by the strong words of support from all over the chamber tonight, and I think that shows the benefit of this particular facility. So hopefully when it comes back in September, we'll have the same sort of support once we've seen the officers go through their checks and what have you, and the options available, and hopefully we can actually make a real difference here moving forward, Chairman. So on that note, I just want to say one other thing, if I may. I learned only very recently that Reach for Health now have forged a link with the North Hampshire Armed Forces Covenant, which is now on their website under Recovery Services. They're due to sign and come in August, and they'll be visited by one of the commanding officers responsible. And I think that's not great news again, for serving armed forces who come back and have issues to deal with. And I think, again, it's just great for the Reach for Health facility for that purpose as well. So, on that basis, I'll put the motion to council.
So, do we agree with the motion?
Agree.
Agreed. Could I invite Councillor Aidan Ramsey, please?
Thank you, Chair. So my motion concerning district council elections in 2019. This council notes that as a result of the impending reorganisation of local government in the county, some councils may cancel their elections scheduled for May 2019. Further notes that Daventry District Council, unlike other councils in the county, holds elections in thirds, and consequently elections in 2019 would not change the political control or leadership of Daventry District Council. It believes that the Daventry District Council elections in 2019 would ensure that Daventry District Council would enter the final phase of existence with a full democratic mandate, and therefore resolves that Daventry District Council should endeavour to hold elections for a third of its seats in 2019.
Councillor Ritchie, you said this motion. Would you like to speak now?
Can I reserve the 6 minutes until the end of the debate?
Yes, you can. Yes. Councillor Mina, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, thank you, Councillor Ramsey, for the motion. I just want to make it fairly short, actually, Chairman, because the point is we have election by Thursday next year. All the other boroughs in North Hampshire have all-out elections next year. All of us at the moment are not going to have elections next year due to the current unitary process, even though if that gets delayed in any way, there could be elections across the whole county at borough level. The decision is not ours, the decision will be government's. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ritchie, please.
Thank you, Chair. I rather expected that response. The decision will be government's, but what is it that we are actually going to say to government? Do we simply sit around and let the government tell us what to do on absolutely everything? Or do we actually go to government and say, look, this is our situation, this is what we want to do? It strikes me that a lot of the thrust of the reorganisation that is being imposed upon us is really an assault on our local democracy. We have got a community secretary, James Brokenshire. Some have pointed out that he's probably the only minister that was appointed because of his name. But he has claimed in a recent report that local government is the bedrock of democracy. Now, let's actually make it the bedrock of democracy. It seems that if we're in a situation where we are trying to prevent the weakening, the dilution of our local democracy through the changes that are taking place, it would seem an absurd time for us to decide that our local democracy should be suspended by not having elections. I just don't see that there is any possible reason for us, for us not doing that. I think that there may be an argument which I can at least recognise when it comes to those councils in the county that have all-out elections. There is an argument that yes, it could be detrimental to the whole process if there was a drastic change in the make-up of a council. It's an argument. I recognise it as one that's got to be considered. I would totally reject it. It's effectively saying let's not have an election just in case the people who are elected are ones that don't agree with us. We're not in that position though. We know that neither the leadership nor the political administration of this council would change if we had an election in a normal way in 2019, and therefore I see no reason at all for us not writing strongly to the Secretary of State, saying that that is the case, that we believe in democracy, it is important to us, and we will actually do it, because we want to have that mandate as we move forward. Our Constitution is clear on the issue. Article 2, Clause 2 states that there will be an election for a third of all councillors in the first Thursday of each year, other than the years in which there are county elections, and that the term of office for a councillor is 4 years. I see no reason for acting outside our Constitution, and in this particular case I can see a lot of reasons for insisting that we follow it.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Sorry, I was not playing with my app and I was trying to avoid the name. Councillor Westlake, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'd just like to say I have a great deal of sympathy with Councillor Ritchie, but having thought about it and been persuaded, I have been persuaded otherwise. the fact that the administration in all likelihood wouldn't change with a new election, sort of, it's the election process would merely be putting a bit of a gloss on something that isn't a great situation in the first place. I agree entirely in an ideal situation we should always follow this and we should always follow the rules and we should always have elections. But there is a cost to those elections and the fact remains, you know, this county is in serious financial strife and anything that we can save I think is sensible. That's not to say we throw democracy out of the window by whatever means, and I think personally I think it would be good to see elections, but I don't think it should be pressed home. I think we should say, I think we should make the point clear that we are a democratic body and we do all believe in democracy and it would be nice to have it, but there are costs to it and primarily I think we'd be throwing the money down the drain for something that would be defunct almost immediately that it was put back together in its entirety. And I think on that basis I'd have to say sort of reluctantly that I can't agree with Councillor Ritchie. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Adam Brown, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's a fundamental problem with this motion, which is that it's based on a false premise. It initially argues that some councils may cancel elections scheduled for May 19 and goes on to argue that DDC should endeavour to hold elections. It's simply not the case that the councils will be cancelling the elections. It's not our decision. And in fact, Councillor Ritchie's argument continues that theme. He mentions the Constitution. Now, the Constitution is the mechanism by which we govern ourselves. And again, this decision is not going to be made by us. It's completely out of our hands. It's in the hands of central government. If the Labour group had brought us a motion that said that maybe we should write to central government to request elections being held next year, that would be a different proposition. But it's not the motion that is before us. The motion that is before us is defunct because it's based on a false premise.
Councillor Ramsey. Would you like to?
I was glad to bring this before the council today because when it was first something that crossed my path, it was something that I felt should be discussed anyway. My concern comes out of the place that it just feels strange to me that, and I know all members are interested in this case, we are entering this scrutiny of what's going to be the new democratic process and structure for the area. And it's quite unsettling to me that by doing that we're also postponing part of our democratic process. That's what I wanted to address. Even if it comes down to us just making the statement, like earlier said, to central government that this is the case that we want to see, that would be very pleasing. I take on board Councillor Brown's comments, and if it is that I can bring that motion forward at a later date, then I'll go legally so if this isn't passed today.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Any more? Sorry, Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this motion, but as it's come, I've heard costs come into it. I'll just refer back to a motion that myself and, as was then, Councillor Campbell put forward when the cuts across councils were hitting us hard, and we put forward a motion to have elections every 4 years to save costs, and it was rejected that it would be undemocratic, we might lose seats en masse, and every other absurd comment was thrown at us at that time. So for it to come back now at cost, when, you know, at that time when we were looking at saving costs, our motion wasn't passed, I feel that that's something that we shouldn't bring into the equation now. We should go along looking at you know, the democratic process of what it means. It gives everybody the right to take that vote. If they're not happy with their current councillor, it gives them a chance to vote them out and get somebody else in who, you know, who they feel will be work better for them. Thank you, Chair.
Because I forgot that you put your hand and you spoke again, so that was my mistake. So now I will take. Do we agree with the motion?
Point of order, Chair.
Can I ask, who's entitled to vote? There must be an awful lot of people here who have got interests in the outcome.
I think it's irrelevant. So please, show of hand, please. Who?
Or we don't?
For the motion.
5, 6, Chairman.
Against the motion? Motion lost. Thank you. Next motion, please, Councillor Ken Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry, I just reached motion error. My apologies, Chair.
No problem.
We put this motion forward because we felt it was right that this council has an opportunity to publicly express what its thoughts are. I know that we cannot formally take a position until we have seen what emerges from the negotiations, what is put before us at the special council meeting next month. But it has occurred to me that while I'm not aware of any member of this council that is happy with the proposal that it looks as if that it will be imposed on us, the two unitary model in which we are grouped together with South Northants and Northampton. Nobody is happy with that. Yet we have had a consultation in which the consultation document spoke of that model as the one that was being considered by all councils. And therefore there's a sort of implication for most people that therefore is something that we actually support. I feel that it's important therefore that this council makes a statement of where it stands. My fear is that when or if a West Northampton unitary comes about, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be angry. They'll be angry at what they feel is the loss of their representation. There'll be anger over council taxes, whether we can do anything about that or not. There'll be anger for all sorts of reasons. And I don't want government or anybody else to be able to turn around to us or our ghosts as a council and say, well, that's what you asked for. I think that we need to make it very, very clear that yes, that we have been collaborating in the discussions around about the West Northants proposal. We have been doing it in a way, hopefully as the motion says, that would protect local services and local democracy, and that I believe is what our council leader and chief executive have been doing. But I see that there is value in actually making that public, that has been the objective. It has been the strategy for our negotiations. I certainly, for one, would not be able to support any bid in which these protections were not there and were not fairly robust. I would suggest that this motion ought to go to the Secretary of State. Now, it may be that the leader of the council will tell us that he has already made the Secretary of State fully aware of what his position is. I think, though, that they need to know that it is actually the position, not just for the leadership of this council, but for the whole council, that there is concern at the solution that is being imposed upon us. I think, too, it's important that this issue is addressed as the whole council, with our Member of Parliament, who has been a proponent of the two unitary model, no doubt without thinking through what the consequences are. I think that we need to send a clear message to our Member of Parliament, a message that says that, look, rather than acting almost as an agent of a rather dictatorial government department, he should actually be listening to what we as representatives of his constituents and his constituents directly are saying, and acting as an advocate on our side, which is why we propose this motion.
Thank you so much. Councillor Dav, would you like to speak now? Or with the
Yes, I'll speak now. Just speak now. I wholeheartedly back Councillor Ritchie in this motion. My greatest concern in this reorganisation is it's a democratic sham. From my reading of various guidelines, proposals in this motion, it reminds me of elections that might be held in a dictatorship. You can vote for any candidate you like, as long as there's one official candidate. In replacing Northampton's councils, you can choose between all the alternatives proposed, but there's only one proposal that's acceptable. You cannot have democratic choice if that choice is limited to a single option. We have issues like, why does the unitary have to be 300,000 people? What's the evidence? What's the justification for that? Why does a mostly rural Daventry district and South Northants need to be grouped with an urban Northampton? They have vastly different needs. If consultation is to be meaningful, you have to explore options within a wide remit. How can this be done? Consultation should be widely held. Where are the meetings? What opportunities do people have to inform themselves and be involved in forming the outcome? I know that we have the online survey, but how many people will fill that in? It does rather look as though decisions have already been taken by individuals who perhaps are working on higher priorities. But it also shows a total disregard national government has for local determination and devolvement. It is surprising we have such low turnout at elections. Thank you.
Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Steve, Chairman, and thank you for Councillor Ritchie and Daventry's motion, which I think, Chairman, is premature. Because at the moment, Councillor Ritchie in particular is on the local government working group of this council, and he's fully aware where we're going to and what we're trying to achieve. Come the end of August, this is the time we have a debate about the outcome once we've gone through the whole process, and we're going to have meetings between now and then with government officials as well. So I think this motion is totally premature. We should actually say object to it on that basis. I think when we come to the end of August, then we have a proper debate about the way forward, when we have all the information before us.
Thank you so much. No other speakers? Councillor Randall, please.
Yeah, the only thing that I'd like to say is, there is an online consultation for members of the public to take part in, but when you speak to members of the public, a lot of them have got no idea what's going on whatsoever. And I just think it's just a shame that more information hasn't been given for them to make a decision, and if the consultation produces a low percentage response, I'd imagine that is the reason why. And it would be interesting to see the difference between the other councils compared with Corby Borough Council, who decided to put a letter out explaining it in simple terms what it would mean, the two unitary authority, by dissolving the county council and the other 7 councils. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just 2 points of information, really. Councillor Dad's referred to an online survey. That was not a survey. It was explained to us at the members' development evening that wasn't a survey, but they did carry out surveys. It was a questionnaire, but it wasn't scientifically designed as a survey. And the second point, just to correct an impression that may have been got from what Councillor Randall just said, the online consultation finished on Sunday.
Councillor Gifford.
Just to say that I think we all individually have a responsibility in this chamber to make everybody aware ourselves. And I, for one, when I've gone around all my parish councils, have spoken, told them there's an online, asked them to publicise it within the villages, and made them aware of how critical and crucial it is that they take part in this consultation.
Councillor Ritchie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond on one point to Councillor Miller. I think this is the time in which we should be making our views clear, particularly to our MP, to anybody who's involved in that negotiation. The negotiation is something that has been on for a long time and will lead up to the bids that are presented at the end of, at the end of August. After the end of August, we will just have one proposal to say yes or no to. It's how we actually frame the negotiation. And I think it's quite important that we have over we've only got 4 weeks that are available to us, but over that time that we should be in a position where we have people who are speaking up for us. We have our MP that is actually making visits to the Secretary of State to say, look, you know, I'm not terribly sure about the way in which this is going. Their positions are never absolutely static. They don't, you know, they're not unchanging. I think I would still urge the Council to back this resolution and make sure that we never know whether our MP takes any more account of what Daventry District Council says and listening to anybody else. But there might just be a little bit of a better chance if we were to pass this resolution and make our point.
Points of information on Mitchell in response to the council issue. Our MP was advised yesterday. He takes a very keen interest in what's going on in this consultation, and I think that's important to understand. Mrs. Daventry mentioned it a few times, so he's not really interested. He is very interested. We all want the best for our residents, and it's not an easy situation. We're not by choice, as you know. We're in this situation not for our own choice, and we have an excellent councillor here, which unfortunately will be part of the collateral damage of what's going on. But what we are saying is we're hoping to have a meeting with the Minister during August to express our concerns and views. And obviously by the end of August, as I said before, we'll be in a better position to take a considered view of how this council should respond. Thank you, Chairman.
And go to the vote now. So is the motion, do you agree with the motion? Do you reject the motion? Yes. The motion is lost. Now, Councillor Ritchie, the next motion, would you like, as we discussed, would you like to speak about that motion on the agenda item 9?
I understand, Chair, that Councillor Randall is the mover of the motion.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Randall. So, Councillor Randall, would you like to discuss the motion under item 9?
Yes.
Thank you. So we will, under item 9, I will ask you to speak. Thank you. Now, report of committee. Is that your wish that I take them on block? Agree. Thank you. Now, recommendation of committee. Page 91. I will ask I would like to ask our Chief Executive a few words of clarification, please.
Thank you, Chairman. First item on the agenda, CG 2018 mechanic force strategy, was actually included in another recommendation further into the meeting to deal with that one.
So, Corporate Governance Committee, CJ 2018, Water Flow Strategy. So we will take it later. Strategy Group, SG 21-1801. Councillor, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. An annual refresh of the climate local has been undertaken to reflect progress and add additional actions. Climate Local is a local government association initiative aimed at encouraging local authorities to commit to minimising their impact on climate change through greenhouse gas emissions reduction and adapting to its inevitable effects. The Climate Local refresh includes all progress since the Council signed up in 2012. Key achievements during 2017-18 are listed in the accompanying report, but I would like to highlight that the overall aim of the carbon management plan is to reduce emissions by 30% has been achieved. The usage of electric vehicle charging points has been included as a corporate plan measure for 2017-20 and has exceeded targets this year. And the Budding Communities project provided 39 community groups with a total of 60 kilograms of wildflower seeds and 4,600 spring bowls for planting across the district. I I therefore ask the Council to approve the climate local refresh, thereby continuing its commitment to minimise the impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan.
Absolutely, Chairman.
Please, do we vote now?
Green.
Thank you. SG 221801, Councillor Miller.
I thought it was Councillor Brown, Chair Smith.
Yes.
Okay, I'll put forward recommendations then.
Councillor Brown, seconder.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's a very simple recommendation before us that came out of a good piece of work by former Councillor Barry Frenchman. It's very simple in that the report recommends that we move to at least 6 meetings of the Scrutiny Improvement Committee each year. That's 6 ordinary meetings, which of course we are able to call extraordinary meetings should circumstances demand. I feel, as does the majority of the Scrutiny Improvement Committee, that having that extra meeting will allow us to better manage our rolling work programme and provide the feedback that Strategy Group and Council requires in its considerations.
Do you wish to agree?
Green.
Thank you. SG 231801, Councillor Olga, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councils have a long-running Clean Up My Community campaign that provides a balanced approach utilising both educational and enforcement initiatives to improve the cleanliness of our district. Following the Council's first dog control orders introduced in 2011, the current Public Spaces Protection Order was introduced in December 2015. After 3 years, the Council can either extend the existing PSPO or consult the public and introduce changes to create a new PSPO, which will run for a further 3-year period up until 2021. In May 2018, the Strategy Group resolved that a consultation be undertaken on the replacement of the existing Public Space Protection Order, Daventry District Council 2015, that expires on the 30th of November 2018. I therefore ask the Council to recommend that the existing Public Space Protection Order, Daventry District Council 2015, be extended until the 31st of December 2018 to ensure the existing powers do not lapse if there is any delay in adopting the Public Space Protection Order following consultation.
Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think it's somewhat to Councillor Organ's surprise that I'm more than happy to second this recommendation. The proposals that have gone out to consultation have been somewhat animated at a strategy group meeting recently, but I'm happy to say that I think the existing Public Spaces Protection Order is entirely measured, entirely reasonable in terms of how it seeks to deal with a very clear and obvious problem, which is dog fouling on our streets, and I'm delighted to second its continuation.
Councillor Ramsey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask for a point of clarification? Because on the recommendation it said the 1st of December, but I think I heard Councillor August say the end of November that it expired. Just wanted to make sure that the recommendations are right there.
That's a good point, yeah. On the strategy group, we said until the 31st of December, but on the papers I'm in front of me, 1st of December, so I'll ask the officer to clarify which date, please.
Through you, Chair, then, the current Public Space Protection Order expires on the 1st of December, so the matter for this council tonight is to extend the current one until the 31st of December, just in case we need a bit more time before the new one is agreed.
Do you agree?
Green.
SG 231802, Councillor Olga again, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the 9th of February 2018, the Council granted full planning permission for 10 affordable houses on Poacher's Close in Walgrave. The Council currently has funding available to support affordable housing schemes It is proposed that money to support the scheme at Poachers Close would be funded using the Council's affordable housing financial contributions from planning obligations under Section 106 of the Town and County Planning Act 1990. This is the first time the Council has pursued a mixed tenure approach to a rural exceptional site. Of the 10 units, 6 will be affordable and 4 will be for local market sale, which will help cross-subsidise the affordable units. I therefore recommend to Council that the application for funding of £107,000 towards Phase 2 of an affordable housing scheme at Poachers Close, Walgrave, be approved, with funding to be drawn from planning obligation funds for this purpose held by the Council. The funding agreement to be valid for a period of 18 months from the date of this resolution. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wood, no.
Yes, Madam Chair. I would like to support this, and obviously being the councillor for the ward, I think it's important that the second phase is completed, so I would like to second this motion.
Do you agree?
Agree.
Thank you. Now, SI 2418, please.
Chairman, you have a substantial item on your agenda later in the agenda. It's item 12. I suggest we refer this to that item.
Strategy Group, AG 281801. Councillor Chandler, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and keep this as brief as possible, but it is quite an important process that we're asking here. People will be aware that we adopted, together with our colleagues, the West Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy on the 15th of December 2014, and that, as set out in that document, it doesn't provide all policies, it provides a strategic framework to guide the preparation of a Part 2 local plan which deals with the remaining matters. What we're asking this evening, Chairman, is that Council approve that the proposed submission version, and I'll explain that in a moment, be sent for release for consultation, and there are a couple of supplementary points to resolve as well. What I want just to point out to people is that this is not a nearly new plan. This is the result of 3.5 years hard work and commitment by a number of staff here and a group of members who have acted as a working group. And over that period of time there has been ample time for public consultation, consultation with developers and experts, and the developing Part 2 local plan has been through a number of versions. We've now reached the point where we believe that we have a version which is a draft for the version to be submitted to the Secretary of State early next year. Once that happens, of course, it's no longer our plan, it belongs to the Secretary of State, and he will ensure that the appropriate examination is carried out, probably in public. There have been a number of comments already at this stage in previous consultation. Some important ones to note are there have been comments about the failure of the fulfilment of the proposed developments in the Northampton Regional Development Area. However, we believe that this is not a matter for this Council's Part 2 plan. This is a matter for the Borough, who have confirmed that they do have enough sites. They just haven't built the houses yet. So there is no requirement for the additional allocations which have been proposed by a number of interested parties. The plan includes, of interest to members, a hierarchy of settlements, and there are no changes to that proposed hierarchy following earlier consultation. We have, however, developed further the open countryside policy. There is some allocation within the Part 2 plan for extra housing in Daventry town. We've had comments from Kettering about the Gypsy Travellers and Travelling Show People policy, but we don't agree with their doubt on that. The gateway proposal on the A45, we can mitigate the objections from Historic England. There is further landscape development in the environmental policy, ENV1, and so on and so on. As I say, this is not a proposal that we adopt this plan, Chairman. This is a proposal that we release it for consultation as the draft submission version for a period of 8 weeks because of the summer break, which slows things down. The consultation will follow the guidance that we have given ourselves in our statement of community involvement. So there will be lots of press notices, there will be copies made available for public viewing at council offices, local libraries until the end of August, and on the council's website. Letters or emails to stakeholders, all parish councils and town councils will be invited to share that information with their people. There will be a facility for enabling an online response, and also paper responses will be available for those who prefer that method. And we will be holding a number of staffed public exhibitions across the district in order to give people further opportunity to discuss their views on the proposal. I would point out, Chairman, that currently our proposed Part 2 plan for submission is based upon an out-of-date version of the National Planning Policy Framework. The new policy framework was published 2 days ago, and that has immediate effect on making planning decisions. But as far as policy is concerned, there is a 6-month grace period, which means that we must submit our Part 2 plan to the Secretary of State before the 24th of January 2019. The timetable will be tight, hence some of the extra points in my resolution, Chairman. So the resolution before Council tonight is that the proposed submission, settlements and countryside local plan Part 2 be approved for formal public consultation according to Regulation 19. That if necessary, a special meeting of Council to be convened to determine submission of the plan to the Secretary of State for examination. That authority is delegated to agree any necessary minor modifications arising during the course of the examination, that these be delegated to the business manager in consultation with the strategic planning portfolio holder, and that the appointed inspector be asked to recommend any modifications to the submitted plan that he or she considers necessary to remedy any issues of legal compliance or soundness, that being the purpose of the examination and therefore the purpose of this consultation. That last one, Chairman, is probably superfluous to requirements because I think the inspector would do that anyway.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
That's all right. Can I ask? Councillor
Foote, Councillor James, Councillor James. Do you want
Don't
to?
need to say anything, you know, I'm quite happy with the report of Councillor Sharper. The sooner we get on with this, the better, so that we submit it in time. Otherwise, there will be complications, I expect. So the sooner we get on with it, the better.
Can I ask a question?
Just to say, Councillor Randall first.
Yes, thank you. There was one thing that I didn't realise at the time that it's been ruled out. It got red line through the initial papers, and this is something that is quite high on the agenda, especially for residents within this town, and it's travellers. Now, within that initial huge paper, there was consideration of a temporary site where the police can direct the travellers straight on to that site. The police did ask me how the meeting went, And they noted that this red line was in the papers, and they said, what does that mean? And I went, well, generally if it's got a red line in it, that means it's been taken out. They did mention that they thought Councillor Auger was going to raise that as strategy, because that would be a way of moving them straight off the sites where they're doing encampments, causing a lot of distress and harm, and obviously a lot of money for us to clear up. But if we did have this temporary site, they can move them straight on and, you know, straight off away from where they're illegally camped. So I still feel that if there's any way that that can be put back into that local plan for it to go into consultation, then please can we do so?
Councillor Frost, please.
Yeah, my point is that I take on board that it's going on for 3.5 years, but it's my understanding that the final version of what we're looking at here was only adopted at the strategy group meeting on the 5th of July. And whilst I'm sure there's much in it that I don't understand, it's my understanding that the bit that's most pertinent and relevant and which affects residents that we represent the most is the settlement hierarchy, and those aspects have only been finalised, you know, really very recently. So my suggestion, straight question to Alan is, can we have a little bit more time to digest the direct impact on that? I mean, there's up to 10 parishes in my ward, and those guys are going to be profoundly impacted on where their village sits within the hierarchy. This information is only very recently come to light. The bit that I have read contains some things which I know personally to be inaccurate, and I would just my sort of plea to you guys is to just have a little bit more time. Maybe could a decision be put back to maybe the next meeting to allow us time to fully digest it. It's nearly a 200-page document, isn't it, that we're talking about here? Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't read it all in enough detail, nowhere near. If you guys have, and you're confident that you fully understand all its implications, then great. But if, like me, you need a little bit more time, then now's a really good time to ask for it, isn't it?
Thank you. I think Simon Bauer would like to say something about a comment from Mrs. Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Randall referred to policy page 09 on the traveller sites, and it's perfectly true. There is in strikeout text both a small number of pictures and a single emergency or temporary stopping place. The change in the policy is not intended to take away that provision. It's simply a method of making the text more responsive to circumstances. What the revised text says is that we'll make the provision in accordance with the evidence. The evidence is still there, and it is still the intention to address those issues. So, no, we haven't proposed to delete that provision. It's just a different way of expressing it.
Councillor O'Donnell, would you
Yeah,
like to
it was on that particular point. We have been in active consultation and conversations with Portfolio about an emergency stopping site. We understand the importance of it to actually manage unauthorised encampments in an effective and efficient way, and those conversations have been active. And I did share with Sergeant Dobbs, he did phone me up about that. I did reassure him that no, we're not scrapping it. We are actively looking at a way to actually help the police with their powers. So hopefully we're reassured on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we agree to the recommendation? So, Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reassure Councillor Frost, actually. If you look at the two recommendations there, we're only agreeing the consultation tonight, and also, if you could have been required, a special council meeting, so you have plenty of time to look at any errors in them and feed those back to the consultation process. So to reassure you, that's all we're doing tonight is agreeing the consultation. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to address Council in regard to this TEP report and the linkage to the DDC draft plan part 2. Landscape character assessment is the process of identifying and describing variation in character of the landscape. The LCA documents identify and explain the unique combination of elements and features that make landscapes distinctive by mapping and describing character types and areas. We've heard some of those from Councillor Chandler, my colleague here. Our landscape are extremely important to us, and they're part of our cultural heritage. With sympathetic planning, design and management, they offer an opportunity to provide a more harmonious link between man, gender neutral, and the natural world for the benefit of both. Sensitive, informed and integrated approaches should help us all to conserve, enhance and restore and regenerate those landscapes that are attractive, diverse and publicly valued, showing that environmental, social and economic benefits can go hand in hand. Over the centuries, writers, artists and others have described and enthused about our landscapes. They have linked them with the social and economic processes and practices of the period, successfully describing and articulating what is special about our landscapes. And in the ward that I represent, that would be the Saxon church that was completed in around 640 AD. Whether urban, rural or somewhere in the middle, importantly they illustrate what makes one landscape different from another. Appreciation and understanding of our landscapes has increased over time, latterly via qualitative and quantitative methods associated with the social and natural sciences, and often prompted by the need and desire to record, understand and influence and manage change. Focusing more upon the proposals, I wish to provide a summary of the representations that argued why the proposed withdrawal of the status of special landscape areas from Boughton to Madewell is not reasonable or acceptable, or at the very least questionable. The proposal is that the eastern sloping edge of the Brampton arm of the River Nene is excluded, i.e. approximately from the valley floor to the A508, whereas the western sloping edge down to the river is retained, looking south to north for those that might know the geography. The report was commissioned by the Council in September 2016 and published in May 2017 to examine the robustness of the SLA status. The report made recommendations to the boundaries of the SLA. It was examined by independent consultants on behalf of Brixworth Parish Council, who disagreed with its findings with regard to the loss of the SLA status around Brixworth. Representations were made to the Council objecting to the report on behalf by the consultants. The report has evidence and including objections which related to the Brixworth Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, which has done extensive work on this. The Council's consultants were instructed to consider the representation and produce a response, which stated that they retained the view that they had that the SLA should be removed. However, I would suggest that the report, as we've seen, and it is quite lengthy, and I have read nearly all of it, so I am quite sad, has produced a disjointed way of presenting the information. It's not a cohesive document, and there are factual errors within it. However, this is not the time for redrafting. The Brixworth Neighbourhood Plan was developed over several years and at all times in consultation with the officers of the Council. Council officer advice was considered and included where relevant within the plan, and support was appreciated by the steering group. The plan was made in December 2016 and thus was available for the Council's consultants as a supplementary planning document, although it does not appear to have been consulted by TEP at all. The Brixworth Neighbourhood Plan is not anti-developmental, as a construction of some 240 homes, along with several benefits to the community, was supported. That's a significant number when you consider the 5-year land supply. Indeed, no reference was made to the Maid Neighbourhood Plan in the TV report, so policy wording already accepted and being used by DDC appears not to have been considered by their consultants. The Parish Council's consultants believe that the Council's report has not established a case for the withdrawal of the SLA status, and argue that this radical change, and it is radical to those communities, has not been sufficiently proven. They have seen the TEP representation response and argue it will reduce the level of protection of valued landscape over time, and there is sufficient uncertainty to warrant not reducing the SLA around Brixworth especially. I've been repeatedly told that this is a matter of interpretation and opinion, and that current methodology should be used. If I can paraphrase the new National Planning Policy Framework, which I've also read, the sad bloke that I am, issued this week, the debate today is about demonstrating why normal planning and development management policies would not be adequate. I recognise that our landscapes have evolved over time and will continue to evolve, Change is constant, but outcomes vary. The management of change is essential to ensure we achieve sustainable outcomes, social, environmental and economic. Decision makers need to understand the baseline and the implications of their decisions for that baseline. The process of landscape character assessment has an important role to play in managing and guiding change. The character assessment should involve an understanding how the landscape is perceived and experienced by people. But colleagues, I would like to summarise the SLA history. I'll move on as fast as I can. The SLA has protected the area from a refusal of a new Sedgebrook village, which would have gone from the village of Sedgebrook to within 1 field of Brixworth for 1,000 houses. The refusal and appeal dismissal of a golf course on Merrytom Lane. The refusal and appeal against garages and other developments. Refusal and appeal withdrawn of 150 houses to the west of Northampton Road. Beyond the confines of Brixworth, and that was just in Brixworth, we've had the SLA has supported the dismissal of the erection of wind turbines and other infill developments in Madewell and elsewhere where the SLA was cited. So it is my opinion that the designation of land as identified as 4D on the plan as an SLA is important to the layered protection and character of the views of the area, which are probably some of the best in the county. From my perspective, it appears that little consideration has been given to long-standing consensus in the landscape evidence base, that there has been limited change in the physical or perceptual qualities of the landscape since it was first designated or reviewed, since the 2014 changes to the definition of the character landscape. And I'm almost there, Chair, and I know you're very generous to others.
Yes.
It is not considered appropriate to remove low-lying areas, so therefore it seems illogical to remove the eastern boundary. The proposed boundary amendments are, in mine and the consultant's opinions, are wrong and potentially damaging to the special qualities that the designation seeks to protect, and would leave a swathe of land unprotected. As such, I would suggest that the proposed alteration is illogical and unjustified, and the A508 should continue to form the SLA boundary. I've been advised that the recent controlled expansion of Brixworth does not qualify as urban development, so no additional protection is required. Yet if the developments referred to earlier were to have developed, then Brampton, Sedgebrook and Brixworth would now be a single homogeneous development.
Point of order, please, Chair. Could you ask him to sum up? He's had more than 5 minutes.
Yes.
What's the proposition?
My proposition is that we should be focusing on the planning decisions which contribute and enhance the natural and local environment. I know that we wish to get this through, but I wanted to make sure that on record we had significant opposition was aware of it. I'm also aware that councillors have been got at over we need to get this going, and therefore I've with consultation with my other colleagues, withdrawn the proposal that we were going to put forward, but wanted to make sure that colleagues were aware that this is not just an urban element, it's not just the moving of a line, it's actually a significant potential damage to the significant landscape and to the eastern part of the district. We're very happy to talk about Daventry a lot, but not necessarily the rural parts of the district.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chandler, please.
Yeah, I was going to sum up, Chairman, because there have been 1 or 2 points raised which I think are worthy of some sort of response. It's pleasing to hear that Councillor Bunting is very supportive of the views of the people he represents. There is nothing in this Part 2 plan which in any way contradicts the neighbourhood development plan for Brixworth. There is nothing in it that says that the Nen Valley, it becomes the Nene at Thrapston, is in any way degraded. We asked the consultants to carry out a review of the special landscape area designations of the whole district, and this was part of their outcome. Just to underline the quality of that consultant, they have already started negotiating with us about the possibility of a different area of the district being part of an area of outstanding natural beauty, so they do care about the landscape. This is a motion before council that we should release the document for consultation. There will no doubt be some small errors to be ironed out. I know of one particularly in my ward. To address the point about the hierarchy, the hierarchy is not new in this document. I appreciate that Councillor Frost is a new councillor, but it's been in part of the discussion and documentation for a very long time. But if he wants to discuss his concerns with myself and or with the staff concerned, I'm sure that's possible. What we're submitting or proposing to submit is based on a very sound evidence base, and that would be tested by the inspector during the examination. So I would ask Council to approve the resolutions as put it earlier.
Do you wish to approve?
Agreed.
SG 281802, Councillor Chandler, and I hope this item will be a bit quicker.
Yes, it will.
Thank you.
This is a conservation area for Boughton. It's been out for consultation. The changes have been made in accordance with the responses to the consultation, and there are always minor editorial changes to be made. So the proposal before you this evening is that the proposed changes to the Boughton Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan be approved, that further minor editorial changes be made to reflect the fact that the document will be in its final adopted form, that the revised Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan be adopted as a supplementary planning document, and therefore the proposed conservation area boundary be designated, that the local list for Boughton set out in the document be agreed, and that further work be undertaken for a proposed Article 4 direction for Boughton, and a further report will be presented on that to Strategy Group. That's the proposal, Chairman.
Happy to second that, Chairman, and a particular compliment to the officers involved. This was a particular issue that went very well indeed. It was a very smooth consultation process resulting in the outcome just described.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we agree? SG 291801. Councillor Gibb. SG 291801.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I know members have a great interest in this item, great enthusiasm supporting all of us in our offer support to the Volunteer Reserve Forces policy. I confirm that we have signed up to the Charter. I think Councillor John Shepherd has a point he'd like to make. He is very eagle-eyed and has a great interest in this. And if the Chairman likes, we'll pass over to Councillor Shepherd. Is he here? Councillor Shepherd. And he very kindly has given me notice of this today, so I was able to consult with Tony Gillett on it. And I do have an answer here for him, but I think we should recommend John.
Could we have a seconder? Councillor Alan Neil.
Yes, Chairman, I'm pleased to second this. I think we should support our armed forces. I feel sure that all of us value the work that our armed forces do, not only at home but overseas, and what they're doing to help keep us safe. Whilst this policy refers to the county itself, I think it also gives an example to the wider community that we as a council value our armed forces. So I'm happy to support.
Councillor Shepherd now.
Chairman, thank you. I wear my green jacket tie with pride. I had 12 years volunteer service, the last 6 or so with one of the best infantry regiments around, green jackets. So I declare that happily. My point is a very simple one. It's to do with money. There are two financial issues here. Firstly, in consequence of the training that is undertaken by volunteers, and the second, in the fortunately fairly remote, but nevertheless, look at it, prospect of them being mobilised. And it's that second point that concerns me, because in the documentation that was before strategy group, and I suspect from what portfolio holders just mentioned, it wasn't spotted at the time. Certainly the minutes of the strategy group are fairly brief, but the current policy is that when a volunteer is mobilised, and I quote from the current policy, the council will make up the difference between the reservist force's pay and the pay he or she would have received from the council. Okay, we make up the difference so that he or her pay remains at the current council level. And under the new terms, the council does not pay the reservist salary or contractual benefits whilst they are mobilised. So on that particular aspect of absence during mobilisation, there's a very substantial drop in the benefit and provision that we make for the reservists. And I did wonder whether that was intentional, whether it was a mistake, and if it was proposed intentional change, whether we could reverse it.
I would ask for clarification.
Thank you, Chairman. As Tony Gillett informs me, the reason it is dropped from proposed policy is that the reservists can claim the difference from the Ministry of Defence, and he's given me a note. If you're called up for service, you can claim financial support to cover the difference between your civilian pay and your service pay, the cost of any benefits in kind your employer stops. The total amount you can claim is £400 a day. If you're serving as a medical consultant with the Defence Medical Services, you can claim up to £822 a day. And if any further clarifications needed, Tony is here to give us advice. Thank you.
Right, that doesn't give you answer to the point. I wasn't aware of that.
So, are we satisfied now with the clarification? Now, HP 29 1802. All the officers have to leave when we discuss this motion. Very So we in the room. I feel rather lonely now. And in the room we just have two officers that could advise me in case if I get into trouble. So please, Councillor Griffin, on that item.
I would refer members to the minutes of the strategy group on page 82, noting remarks that the NRW was not intended by the government to increase wages at all levels in an organisation. At this council, we aim to treat our employees fairly, and in my view, differentials should be addressed, including even the senior management with whom Councillor Ritchie appears to have a problem. Benchmarking has shown that this council has paid less for the same roles as SNC and the borough, with whom we are likely to be unitarised. I believe our employees would have been disadvantaged in this respect if the statement is not supported. Already money has been included in the budget, and environment should be made from the recruitment and retention to the salaries budget to implement this revised pay policy statement, which is proposed to address progress for unitary in a fair and a reasonable way. Our full attention must be given to recruitment and retention, and I propose Council supports the statement which will help us to achieve the prioritised agenda to the benefit of residents within the likely timeframe left to us. Thank you, Chairman.
Do you like Councillor Morgan?
Chair, I'd like to second this, please. As a resources portfolio holder, I think this actually represents good value for money for us. I think we've got some fundamental challenges ahead of us. We need to, you saw already what the impact of the officers leaving the room is upon us, and we need to value it. I was listening yesterday to a very interesting piece on the Radio Northampton programme, actually the Annabel Amos show there, and actually it's fascinating. There was a union representative from the county council there talking about the incredible challenges they're having at the county council, which of course we know about, and the impact on the workers. And I think we need to do everything we can to protect the workers we have, and this absolutely strikes me as the right thing to do, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Randall, please, first, because Sandra was Councillor Ritchie. So please.
I'll hand on my motion now, is that correct?
Yes.
Right, okay. So staff salaries. This council is committed to giving its staff a fair reward for the services they provide. Recognises the need to strike a reasonable balance between rewarding staff and using council tax revenues to maintain and enhance services and fund projects for the betterment of residents. Notes that in May, the annual increase in the cost of living index was 2.3%. The average pay settlement in the second quarter of 2018 was 3.5%. In April, Unison accepted a 2% salary increase for local authority staff, covered by national pay bargaining arrangements, but with much higher increases for low-paid staff. Nevertheless, resolves that all DDC staff should receive a salary increase, excluding entitlements to scale increases, of not less than 3.5%. This council welcomes the introduction of the national living wage, although noting the difference between the national living wage set by the government and the higher level recommended by the Living Wage Foundation, but rejects the argument that across-the-board salary increases are required to accommodate the introduction of the national living wage, noting that Unison has not requested such increases. Notes that in 2017, the median salary for employees outside London was around 23,000, and that all DD salaries in bands 1 to 6 were below this level. This council therefore accepts the recommendation of the strategy group for band 1. It rejects the recommendations of the strategy group for all other bands and instructs officers to prepare revised recommendations for these bands which, A, the top salaries in each band represent increases over current salaries of 7% for a band 2, 6% for a band 3, 5% for bands 4 to 6, and 3.5% for bands 7 to 13 and senior officer bands. And B, salaries for other points in each band are set to provide roughly equal increments between the points in each band. And 3, it resolves that should a revised pay structure not be approved before the 1st of October 18, all staff shall receive a salary increase of 3.5% on that date, and subsequent changes will be backdated to the 1st of October 18 as soon as possible. And 4, resolves that in cases where a salary is considered to be uncompetitive, the strategy group will be given delegated authority to increase the salary by 1 scale point, subject to satisfactory evidence being presented to it. The council notes the difficulty that DDC may face in retaining staff as a result of the impending reorganisation of the local government. It therefore resolves to give consideration to the payment of end-of-contract bonuses to staff who remain with DDC until its dissolution. Thank you.
Councillor Oswald, would you like to
I
speak
would.
now?
I think it would be useful, Chair, if I were to second the resolution at this stage. You'll appreciate that we have consulted with the monitoring officer about whether we could submit this as an amendment rather than a motion, but we understood this is the way we had to proceed. You know, our concern is, yes, we want to be generous to our staff. Councillor Randall has mentioned the 2% that was negotiated as for, you know, for local government staff who are in a national wage bargaining system. A couple of days ago, we had the announcement of what was described as the biggest salary increases for almost 10 years for public sector workers. These increases were teachers 3.5%. Not all teachers, though. Those in the higher level will get 2%, those in leadership positions 1.5%. Prison officers 2.7%. Police 2%. The same 2% for doctors and dentists. We want to be generous. What we have proposed are very much higher rates, much higher increases than that. We have suggested at least 3.5% for all staff, including senior staff, and very much higher increases for people who are down at the lower end of the salary scale. Our increases that don't compare with what I think most people would regard as astronomical. 6.6% overall is what the strategy group has recommended. It's miles away from anything else that any other organisation or institution is considering for salary increases. I need to ask why we're coming up with this figure of 6.6% this year. Nothing much has changed since last year, where staff got a 2.5% increase, and I think it was a 2% rise the year before. If there is something wrong now with our salaries, why did we not change it last year or the year before? The rate of inflation over the past year has only been just over 2%, and therefore the case for 6.6% is one that people outside this council are going to find very difficult to understand. We can't blame the national living wage, because all of these other increases that I mentioned earlier have been in organisations and in government departments that also have needed to introduce the national living wage. The only difference I can really think of that has changed things here is that the council doesn't need to worry about funding money for building a canal. I know that here, in this council, we all think the best of each other. There are others who might just question whether people really thought that the canal arm had been more important than the welfare of our employees. I know that there is an argument too that in a couple of years the money that Daventry Council has, because we have been prudent in our financial management, the money that we have will simply go into the coffers of a unitary authority. And yes, that is true, but that is not a reason for reckless spending. The less that councils are able to contribute to the new unitary, the more that residents will need to pay in their council taxes to help to pay off the debts that unitary inherits. We've got obligations to staff, of course we have, but we also have obligations to residents. Chair, can I point out that on a matter that was in a way with substance, that you're allowed to speech?
No, I am allowed 5 minutes, and you are.
Councillor Bunting, I think, was.
I am showing. Sorry, I am showing the meeting. I ask you to wind up. Thank you. 1 minute.
Very well. You will have seen. Some of you will have seen the figures that I circulated just last night. Some of you also may have received the response that we got from one of the officers just shortly before the meeting. We would argue that these figures are much more understandable for people outside. We believe that there will be great anger across the council, across the county. We have people who are working with other local councils that are not going to be getting increases anything like this. They are going to be in positions in which their jobs are being threatened, we have redundancies coming along, and they see that we are being, I think we are being reckless and unreasonable in what we are doing. Of course, we recognise that there's a problem of staff retention, and that is why we suggest that the answer to that is not to have these ridiculous increases, but to keep some of that money so that we can offer that as incentives to make sure that when this council goes into its final few months, we don't suddenly find that we can't deliver services because staff have all walked up to other jobs. We have something there that we can offer as an end of contract incentive to make it possible. And I have no problem if there's a view that our proposals should be taken as a sort of working model.
Could you find out now?
And that if there is a need, for example, for introducing an extra point at the top of 13, so that it overcomes some of the problems that Councillor Osborne raised at the strategy meeting, we can do that.
Thank you so much, Councillor Osborne, please.
Good evening, everybody.
And I will ask you to be short too. 5 minutes.
You know I won't be long, Chairman. I don't support what Councillor Ritchie said. As you're aware, at Strategy Group, I brought up, as you know, I'm Chairman of Planning. We can't get planning officers. We struggle like mad. We've lost 3 in as many months. All to local authorities. So why have we lost them? Because the local authorities pay £5,000 above air level for each of the planning officers, senior level and junior planning officers. At the moment, we employ 2 via an agency. One of them costs nearly as much as the Deputy Chief Exec cost before he got his rise. That's how much we're paying for it. And the standard planning officer is costing us considerably more than a senior planning officer would cost via an agency. So we've got 2 agents. They're good planners. They just cost us the earth. The 3 planners that left, they were excellent planners. They came here, they liked the authority, everything. But we can't attract planners when somebody is offering £5,000 more at South Northampton, £5,000 more at Northampton Borough, and they had to, and Corby, and also East Northampton, which is where 3 of the planners went. Chairman, we can't carry on like that. If we're going to get staff, we need good staff, we need planners. We can't get agency planners all the while. We need to pay them decent and proper wages. I don't care what anybody says. To be quite honest, you've got to go to university, you've got to get a degree, you've got to have a reasonable level of intelligence to become a planner. And to my mind, the wage that they're paid is considerably poor compared with other jobs. Chairman, I support this absolutely fully, and I will defend it in the newspapers outside and to anybody. Let's pay our people what they're worth, like other authorities do.
Thank you. Let's continue, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I remember the strategy group very, very well, actually, because one thing that sort of surprised me a bit was that the Labour group just focused on national living wage and didn't really focus on recruitment and retention, which you have done tonight to a little bit of degree. And it's a bit weird also at the strategy group. I think one member said, it's a bit back to funders. You know, here's the Conservative administration trying to pump money to give the staff more money, and the Labour group don't want to do that, which is a bit unusual, you know. The point we'll make on this, actually, is about fairness and equity. If you look at the 2 councils we're merging with, potentially on the unitary, Northampton Borough and South Northampton Council, their staff get paid far more on the same jobs as our staff do at Daventry. And I would defend to the hilt the performance of this council compared to others in this area, and I think our staff deserve to be rewarded fairly. Now, if you're saying you don't think that's right, then you're entitled to that opinion. But I think, and the staff will still be on lower levels than their compatriots on those other 2 councils. And when you move into these new unitary, when it comes to jobs, and they'll be applying for jobs, I think we should give our staff every opportunity to be successful in their job applications. So I think you should tread very carefully when you sort of talk about this. You know, I've seen the figures, and actually the amount of money that is in the budget already, we can afford this. There's no great deal on this, and Councillor Morgan made that point very clearly. This is about being fair and equitable to our staff, who we value very, very dearly. And I'm sure you do really. And I think you've got to be very careful not to give the perception that you don't. Thank you very much.
Councillor Mickel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to say a few words on this, but before I do, could I just ask for a point of clarification from you? Am I right in believing that all members of the, all officers of the council should have withdrawn, apart from the lady taking the minutes?
No, two officers are present there if I needed some help with clarification.
Okay. Sorry, I believe you said all officers of the council were withdrawing.
No, except two.
It's a little unclear who they were.
Yes, except two, sorry.
Okay. All right.
In case of I need some help with clarification.
Okay.
So far, do I need?
Thank you. Right. I mean, in favour of the recommendation from the strategy group, I don't have an issue with that. I do, however, have something of an issue with the proposed motion from Councillors Randall and Ritchie, which, to my thinking, is not a particularly well-written proposition. I don't think I feel minded to support it, but so what I have to say really is based on the possibility that maybe the council as a whole might support it, and I would urge caution for one particular reason. I mean, looking at page 4 in our papers, what we're being asked to consider is, in some respects, fairly clear-cut. The council, therefore, 1, accepts the recommendation, that's clear-cut. Number 2, rejects the recommendation, that's clear-cut. 3 and 4 are also clear-cut. We resolve that. It's proposed that we should resolve that if certain things happen, certain other things should then happen. That's all fine. We then have a disembodied paragraph hanging around underneath with no number on it. And I cannot tell from this whether that is supposed to be part of the resolution, the proposed resolution that we are considering, or not. It doesn't have a number on it. If it isn't, that's fine. If it is, it's alarmingly vague. We're being asked to consider the possibility that in the future we might think about something, essentially, which in administrative terms is a bit of a non-decision. If it is suggested that there should be some hook on which we should hang in the future, the question of end of contract bonuses, I would suggest that it needs rather more consideration than just a 4-liner hanging around at the end of a proposition. Has there been staff consultation on that? I have no idea. It doesn't say. What would the end of contract bonus be? No idea. It doesn't say. Who would be entitled to it? No idea. It doesn't say that either. Who would approve it? That isn't said either. Would the person who approved it be entitled to have one themselves? That doesn't say. What's the total cost for council? That isn't said either. What are the financial implications for council? Can it afford it? I have no idea. None of that is covered. So I really would urge that if council is minded to accept the proposition of councillors Randall and Ritchie, it should ensure that that paragraph is not written into any decision. It is, I'm sorry to the two members, but it's not a particularly well-written proposition.
Councillor Randall, would you like, and after we take one more before going back to...
Yes, thank you. I don't know who actually looked through all the pay scale percentage increases on the strategy papers, but we have got some members of the public here today, so they'll probably be interested to know actually why we brought this forward and why we felt that it was unfair. So just to give you some examples, obviously the national living wage has come in, which means it was there to bring those low paid workers out of that poverty bracket. So they have got a bigger increase in their salaries. But just to look at some of the examples that you are considering this evening, a band 7 will get a pay rise of £1,130. A band 9 will get a pay rise of £2,245. A band 12, £1,419. So you've already gone up, down, up, down. Then you've got the Deputy Chief Exec, £5,278. And the Chief Exec, and I'm working these on the highest band of their scale, the Chief Exec would receive a pay rise of £7,490. So the percentages that are before you tonight that are in strategy papers, you've got a 4% here, you've got 12% going on here, you've got 7% going on there. We felt it was totally unfair. And to give the senior team a pay rise of 6.6%, to give them pay rises of half the salary of the workers down the bottom. Now we say about staff working hard, yeah they do, and that's all staff. It doesn't matter if you are at the bottom of a band 1. You come to work and you do your best. And, you know, and just because you haven't gone up further, or you may not have gone to university to start on that higher scale, you still work your best. So what is fair? Is, you know, so what we put forward was actually, we considered this very carefully, because it actually wouldn't have been a pay increase that we would have put forward. We felt we were being very generous, and as Councillor Ritchie has said in the media this week, actually, you know, all of our, you could say police work really hard, nurses work really hard, you can go across the whole of that sector, work really hard. Nowhere near 6.6% that we are giving senior management at the top. Coming back to Councillor Randall, is give consideration, is what we said in the last paragraph. Councillor Micklewell, to give consideration. Please will you refrain from using that. It's not even used in the court of law anymore.
So please.
So no.
Please could you sit down? Sit down, please.
When I've just finished, I will sit down.
No,
please do not use that. It's disrespectful. Please do.
Point of order. Point of order, Chairman. The point of order is, if the chairman stands up, everybody sits down.
Exactly.
That's it. I'm sorry, but that's in the Constitution.
I am fed up with our group being bullied in this council chamber because you do it all the time.
Sit down.
Would you like me to leave?
Yeah. If you wish, you can.
If you would like to send me out, I will.
I do not send you, it's your choice.
Well, please do not use that.
Please, you were repeating yourself into the meeting.
It's disrespectful when you're
so
all rude.
Please, no, I will do the same. I did ask Councillor Bounty, so I will take 2 more, and after Councillor, I know it's very late in the day, Councillor Griffin will return. Councillor Bunting, and please be brief, and I will not use my gavel.
Thank you so much. And I have been told to sit down 3 times already tonight, so I am a victim.
Yes.
The key thing that came across to me from Councillor Osborne and rereading the paper is concern about recruitment and retention. Now, in my day job, I operate in a unionised environment with roughly 3 times the number of staff as the council employ, and we have a number of other mechanisms to ensure retention of key staff, like the planners that Councillor Osborne talked about, which are called a market supplements, which are fully accepted by the unions, of a way in which you make sure the £5,000 differential is removed from the process. My concern is, from reading the papers and listening to the debate, is that we are using a fairly blunt instrument, and I want to make sure that the council has return of service and market supplements within its pay toolbox to enable planners to be retained and paid a market rate, even if the grading and salary structure doesn't deliver that. But it's a clear evidence that we are losing staff and market supplements are there, and I'm concerned that we do not have that. And if that is something that we need to authorise the officers to have on a retention basis, then we should do it. And I'm so pleased we've got some staff who can tell us. Thank you, Chair.
Could you please clarify that point?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have a market settlement policy in place.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, and after I will go to Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make it very quick. I wanted to come back on Councillor Randall's point there, actually. And that is, the fact of the matter is, we here are not concerned about other councils, as Councillor Ritchie's point. We're not concerned about the police in that respect, we're not concerned about public sector employees. What we have to do here, our duty as councillors, is to keep this place running till the end for the people of the public. And the fact of the matter is, if we're saying, what's the message to the public, they don't want to hear about staff being paid, the public are going to have a real problem, as all of us are members of this district, if the whole thing falls apart before the end. That is going to be a problem. We have a duty to make sure we put systems into place to make sure that we prevent that from happening as best we can. And that's why I totally support this, and I'm pleased to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Councillor Griffin, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I do apologise that members haven't treated you in proper respect. I'm also very upset that we're using this as a political football from some quarters. Our employees are due far more respect than that. I mean, I could go on.
Point of order, Chair.
are we not obliged to show respect for each other, or have an opportunity to respond if our remarks have been misconstrued?
So please, thank you. I will take that in mind. I will keep that in mind. Councillor Griffin, carry on.
I'm sorry, I would reiterate that we should not use this as a political football. I could say a lot more. I could repeat everything everybody else has said. I think the main point in this report, which will affect all the people we represent, is that our full attention must be given to recruitment and retention, and I cannot agree with the alternative suggestions. We have to go ahead. I hope you will support our original idea and our original paper, because it will help us to achieve the prioritised agenda to the benefit of our residents. Remembering, of course, the time frame, the likely time frame left to us. Thank you, Chair.
Do we agree?
Agree.
Agreed.
Sorry. So first, do we agree?
Order.
Yes.
Before we make any decision about Councillor Randall and Councillor Ritchie's proposition, what is the situation with this paragraph lurking at the bottom? Because if this gets passed, is that in what we've decided or not?
The motion. Do you agree the motion?
No,
Which one? Which motion?
The motion, this is the one.
The strategy group.
Point of order.
No.
Don't we
No,
have
the
to
motion.
vote on the amendment first before we vote on the strategy group? So we should be voting on the amendment first and then voting on the strategy group.
No, we've got to vote on the motion.
Yes. That is the amendment. That is the motion. So we vote first on the motion. Is the motion agreed?
No.
Show of hand.
It's our motion.
Yes.
It's our motion.
This vote's for the motion.
What was the motion? 5. Against. The motion is lost. Now, do you agree with SG 291802?
Agreed.
Done. Can you vote out, please? 5. Could we ask
The officers to come in.
please?
Speak to that. That's
Thank you. We review now. So ASJ 301801, and that is a double item. So,
Madam Chairman, thank you. I'm proposing this as Chair of Corporate Governance. I'm assuming everybody's read the Counter Fraud Strategy, because you're all good people. But I'd really just ask you to note the 5 key principles of the strategy, which is to acknowledge our responsibilities to counter fraud, to identify the risks within the council, to reduce fraud, to develop appropriate strategies and policies to make sure that we avoid fraud where we can, and that we provide appropriate resources to the audit team and others to make sure that we provide the council with assurances that we don't have fraud, and then obviously take action to prevent it, detect and investigate that fraud. I put it to the council to vote for it. Thank you.
And I'm happy to second that, Chair.
thank you. Do we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. AJ 311801, Councillor Auger, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Food and Standards Agency and the Health and Safety Executive have issued statutory instructions to local authorities. These require the council to produce a service plan for food safety and occupational health and safety. The report was attached to the papers. I therefore propose that the council approve the food safety plan and health and safety service plan for the year 1st of April 2018 to the 31st of March 2019. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have a second now?
Yeah.
Councillor Morgan,
I'd second that, Chair. No particular comments, thank you.
do we agree?
Agreed.
AJ 321801, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, you will see that this recommendation is about the construction of a sports hall at West Haddon Primary School. This is to secure approval to release Section 106 money to build a sports hall, which will also be available for wider use in the community. As I stated at the strategy group meeting, this must and is a very worthwhile project. The recommendation is that a payment of £58,000 is made from Section 106 money, which helps to deliver a facility worth £830,000. I think we've got to agree that's excellent value for money. It meets all our criteria for the benefits of the community, and we need to move this forward within its time span. There is no doubt in my mind this is something that we as a council should fully support, and I request that you do so.
Chair, I must declare an interest here. I'm a member of the West Haddon Parish Council, and I also live in West Haddon.
That is
Not peculiarly interested.
Do I have second? Councillor Miller.
I'm happy to second it, Chairman.
Yes,
I have a
Councillor.
question, Chairman. After being at County Council Audit Committee this afternoon and asking the question, spent a considerable amount of 106 money, I hope the council isn't a participant in putting 106 money into it as well, is it? Because I'm concerned that they might not have spent their bit, they might have spent their bit and might have to borrow their money. So I only asked the question to the person that perhaps wrote up the 106. Are the county involved in supplying money to it?
Can I have clarification, or will we come later? Maria.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chairman, we can look into that.
So we will look, thank you for your question, Councillor Osborne, we will look into that. Do we agree to the recommendation?
Agreed.
Please, the officer looking into it. Thank you. AG 321802, Councillor Hill again, please.
Thank you again. This is actually about additional funding for voluntary and community grants. and I think that's something that's basically dear to all our hearts. The advice is that an additional £250,000 funding is made to the capital grant budget and an extra £60,000 in-year funding made available for the voluntary and community sector revenue grants. Worth mentioning that's at least over another £250,000 in total. Very welcome. I would also like to refer you to the additional recommendation number 4 regarding garden waste. Basically that the garden waste charges for those charities that are eligible, and I believe you've all seen the list that was circulated that explains it quite fully to you all now, that their garden waste currently is treated as household waste and that be waived. It is to be noticed that this received unanimous support at strategy. Demand on our grant system has and is increasing. This is our opportunity to tackle this and provide increased funding to the voluntary and charity sector, financed from council reserves. I ask you all to approve. Thank you.
Councillor Gifford, please.
Thank you. Yes, I support what we're doing with the voluntary sector, especially in light of what's happening at the county council level. The voluntary sector needs our help as much as possible. And regarding the last point 4, yes, you've all seen a list that was circulated, but for the members of the public that won't have seen the list, the clarification is for places of worship, residential hostels for those with no places to live, charity shops, services, households, and places mainly used for public meetings, e.g. potentially village halls owned by a village hall charity. This is just an example. For the avoidance of doubt, village halls controlled by a charity would be likely to fall under this exemption, but those controlled by a parish council would not.
Councillor Auger, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You know, this is a great opportunity for us as councillors to get out there and work within our communities to find projects that meet the vision of this council. They will have to go through due diligence, and that's quite correct, but actually put in money to improve the lives of the people that we represent. I hope that we'll all be busy now finding those projects and keeping our officers busy. Hopefully not too busy, but they can cope with the workload. But think at the end of this will be our communities benefiting, and I hope that we'll all be busy trying to support them in this proposal, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Futcher, please.
Thank you, Chair. Of course I support this recommendation. It's very welcome. The money will make a great impact. Just as a caveat though, we do have to have some kind of methodology in terms of distribution, so who receives the greatest impact, the greatest benefits for the most people who potentially have the most needs. So as we go through this, and perhaps we can work together across party and have some decisions who receives the money at what time.
Councillor O'Neill, please.
What I would say is that we've got an excellent criteria already laid down that works for our grant system. It's always been the way, and I fully support it, that where there is a need that benefits the community within the community, then that grant is granted. And I personally feel this, and I said this at if it ain't broke, don't mend it. It works very well. Let's continue. Rest assured that we certainly do support the applications that come in, providing they meet the criteria, and that is benefits to the community. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, I don't want to simply repeat the debate that we had at the strategy group meeting. But,
so please don't.
But I could not disagree with Councillor Hills more. We don't know that it works because we don't have any empirical evidence where we look and see that it works. Yes, I'm not doubting that we give much needed support to some very, very valuable organisations that are doing tremendous work in the community. But I also have a concern that we don't have a structure in which there is any accountability that comes back to us. We here are the members who have been elected to take responsibility for the work of this district council. And there's a certain level of grant, not necessarily every grant, there's a certain level of grant at which I believe that at least some elected members need to be involved. Otherwise, if there is any criticism to be made, we have got no option but to criticise, publicly criticise our officers. And that is not how it should be. We're elected to take these responsibilities, and I think we need to have a structure where we can actually do that.
Councillor Pritchard,
I was just going to reiterate Councillor Rich's thoughts. It does need evaluation. You're spending money on projects, as worthwhile projects, Councillor Organ suggested. We need some kind of evaluation of its success rather than we've created a building for somebody. So I asked for the criteria, but also evaluation.
Thank you so much. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you. I thought we had a system in place. I think what's happening is we're extending the current system where it is regulated. And what we're trying to encourage is time about. It's just about time now. If you don't, and I agree with what you said before about the need to get monies out in the community. It's about the fact that if a unitary coming along, we don't know when it's going to kick in, when the government may say to us, we can't spend any more money. So it's important to get this grant money out in our community. We have a proven process already of evaluation. And I suggest we don't mess around trying to create a new one, when in fact time might be the essence. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Councillor Oswald.
Just a quick point. Councils make the policy, officers carry the policy out. So if officers don't carry it out right, they get the backsides kicked, don't they? And we make if we don't make the correct policy, we get our backsides kicked. And then that's the way the council works.
Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Ian, and after I will ask Oswald.
Just clarification here, really, if I may, because there has been timing issues in that some charities will have already paid for the waste charge. Are they able to apply under the grant scheme for a refund?
I will ask for clarification from the officer, if he can get all.
Chairman, I think the strict answer to your question, Councillor Gilbert, is no, because the International Grant Fund would do that. And as the resolution is currently worded, I don't think it would have retrospective effect into the full recommendation. I think if you wanted to have retrospective effect, you would need to be explicit that that was retention.
Could I propose an amendment that does explicitly say those already paid?
Yes, you can propose an amendment.
Right, can I propose that amendment, please?
Do you have a
Do I have a seconder?
I would like to second that.
Councillor
No, I'd like to second that.
Yeah.
I think it's a very wise thing, and no further.
Thank you. So we have an amendment on the motion. Yes, so we will have a clarification. Can you say exactly and which date you want to validate?
To when it started. Yeah. The scheme started. So with this, when we took over in June, we started charging.
June.
June,
please.
June the 4th. Thank you so much.
We didn't charge people then, so we can't refund.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add something to this argument when we talk about evaluation. I think it's right. We've had a system in place that was recommended by members, as Councillor Oswald said. The members recommended it. The officers carry it out. Now, if you look at your email and you read your media releases, if you do, you will see that the majority of these, we publish a media release and we also publish the comments from those who receive it. And I myself, together with the council who's been looking after the grants, have visited many of these places following the grant to see the impression that it's made and what the success has been on this. So I think, I have no doubt that what we do goes into the community, good value to the community, and it is valued, it is looked at, and we release media releases in the majority of cases. Now and again, there may be a small grant that doesn't get publicised, but in the majority, we do issue releases which give you all the information. I'm sure you've all received these. If you haven't, let me know, because I see them and I certainly make comments on the media releases regarding their effectiveness. Thank you, Chairman.
We go back to the motion and...
Where's the point of order, please?
Yes,
A very sensible proposal has been made, which is time-bound,
yes.
but I'm just conscious that it could also be seen as precedent-setting of making retrospective awards across a number of areas, which actually could be quite detrimental for the organisation. It is not normal in any grant environment to make retrospective awards. And I think while supporting the proposal, could I ask that that is clarified, that this isn't setting a precedent for retrospective awards?
So I will ask clarification from the officer or the monitoring officer, please.
I will give a general point, which is you're making a decision with respect to this particular scheme, closed environment, therefore, with respect to that scheme only. When you come to another consideration, you'll have regard to this maybe, or you maybe not, and you make the rules for that. Because these are discretionary choices here. So we're making those choices. It's within that environment of this discretion. We can make that choice if we wish, not without precedent.
So do we take, do we agree with the amendment? First, do we agree with the amendment? Great. Do you agree now with the motion with, the recommendation with the amendment? Great. Thank you. 1832, 1803. Councillor Ian, please.
Only one more article, which I can assure you put up with this concerning. This is about access improvements at the country park. The aim is to seek approval for funding to improve the circular footpaths, footbridges, timber jetties and play equipment. The park is known as our jewel in the crown, and quite frankly, I hope that this continues to be so. There was a media release on the 27th of June informing you that we have installed a new bridge on the Reservoir Walk, thanks to Tompkins Joinery and their helpers. So that's a start. However, some of the structures are over 20 years old. The park is in its 80th year. Replacements are needed. Jetties will also provide further opportunities to view wildlife. Play equipment is vital for our young visitors, and we need to enhance the facilities for this age group. Councillor Randall suggested soft matting under the play area, and just to let you know that I am in discussion with the officers on this, whether it's feasible, and as I say, it's now being looked at. Our country park attracts 400,000 visitors annually from near and far. We have held the Green Flag Award since 1999. We won it again this year. And quite frankly, that's no mean feat. I would like to congratulate everyone involved, from the officers, the rangers, and friends of the country park, and everyone who played a part in this. This year, a couple of areas were allocated amber. What helped to sway the things was the fact that at strategy we approved the recommendation to make these changes. So the recommendation for council will help this year, but the improvements need to be carried out ASAP. For us to be in the running next year. We are looking for good quality workmanship, appropriate for a first-class country park. The recommendation is that a capital budget of $235,000 is created from Section 106 money. These improvements are needed, not just for the green flag, but for the benefit of everyone that uses it. I had the pleasure of attending the free cinema in the country park. We do so many other things in there, so many other events, that quite honestly, this money will be well spent, and it will ensure that we keep our green flag for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to second this. It must be clear to everybody that I might have a particular interest in some aspects of this. Those of us who use wheelchairs do not expect to be able to go everywhere and do everything, but it is nice if footpaths in particular and bridges can be kept in good order so that they are easily accessible to the less mobile. This doesn't necessarily mean that the footpaths have to be paved or tarmacked, but the removal of ruts and potholes can be quite supportive. So I'm very happy to second the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Wesley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to support this. It's much needed work around the country park. But what I would say is, can we please ensure that there is a proper and effective care and maintenance programme put in place to actually look after this investment that we're putting in, because my opinion is that a lot of the stuff has actually been broken, destroyed and not looked after properly going forward, and which has resulted in the need for some of this work being done. Not all of it, but some of it. I think it's really important that the country park is genuinely looked after across the board, all around, to actually make full use of this expenditure, because there's other things that we can do, primarily down to care and maintenance.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ian.
Yeah, thank you for that point, Councillor Wesley. Totally agree. We've got new contractors now, North, and I believe there is a programme that they will look at the park. If they don't creep up to scratch, rest assured I shall be banging Councillor Guildford on the shoulder and saying what's going wrong or what's happening here. But there is a proper maintenance that is carried out, and we need to keep that up. We need to keep the country park up to standard, and I appreciate your support on this. Thank you.
Councillor Preacher, please.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Of course, I support this amount of money. Well, actually, no, I don't support the amount of money, because I ask myself, is this enough, really? Because we have an opportunity here to completely refurnish, regenerate this area while we have some capital reserves currently until other unitary, well, proposed unitary authority, other partners might actually see us as a cash cow in terms of the way this council's been run correctly, financially prudently. So why don't we expand this budget? When we talk about play equipment, my own village has a budget of 60,000–70,000 to sort their play equipment out. It's incredibly expensive. What I can't see is what's allocated where, what equipment will be replaced, knowing that I'm advocating for all age groups, children to access this equipment, and the footbridges, so people with disabilities can access also. So is it enough, Councillor Hilton? I'll ask you, perhaps.
Councillor Miller, and after we pass.
Councillor Pritchard makes a very good point, actually. The point is, we have got money, it's been raised in the Daventry district area. I know we're very keen to spend as much as we can in the right way, with due diligence and due process, for our communities. And therefore, I would suggest we can't really change the figure now. What we can do, though, is if we have schemes going forward, like we talked about Reach for Health earlier tonight, things like that. If we have good schemes going forward, there's an opportunity to actually put the case forward and let's see what we can support. So I'm all for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ian, would you like
I'm going to say something very similar, actually, in that, you know, whatever you do, sometimes you wonder, is it enough? But we haven't got open pockets, even though we've got money to spend. You still need to spend it wisely. But I believe that as we review things, there is a possibility then to perhaps create further funding for further things in the country park. It's something we should be keeping an eye on. But thank you for your support.
Thank you. So do you agree with the recommendation?
Great.
SG 331801. Councillor James.
You missed one.
So the Eli, I was looking at the time because in question hour I asked if you want further. SG half an hour, yes, sorry. SG 321801. Councillor here.
This is my last one, so I'll be as quickly as I possibly can for you.
Agreed.
EAC Community Access Plan. This follows on from earlier discussions that the council holds on the held. The council holds a site freehold, and this is registered with the Act 125 years from January 2016. The proposal is that the business manager consult with the portfolio owner to agree community access plans with EAC under the provisions of the revised lease for the former UTC buildings. The Act has produced a draft plan. More information is needed. The plan should be available and in place by the start of the new academic year, and therefore, with having an approved plan, I believe should benefit both parties. So I just ask for your support on that.
Do you have a cylinder? Councillor Morgan.
Chair, no comments on this, but I have supported. Thank you.
Councillor Randall, please.
Yes, thank you. I did speak about this on strategy, so I just think I better just quickly touch on it again. Obviously, when it was the UTC building and that failed, the building was handed over to EACT. The one thing that EACT wanted was the age restriction lifted on the building so that it was accessible for all pupils. And then this seems to have got into this legal, not battle, but legal discussion on, yes, we'll lift your age restriction if you open the building to be used by the community, which they already use by the community. They produced a report. I thought it was a very well written report. See no reason why we were still haggling over this. This has taken more than 12 months, and all this time it's just been more money, more stress, more staff, being used to resolve this issue, and to me it should have been quite quick. Members of the public, would you like to, yes, we did hand over the land, and yes, it was of monetary value to the council, but we handed it over to UTC. It's now EACT. Are you happy? We lift the age restriction and let all our pupils benefit from the building. And every member of the public I spoke to went, yes. And 12 months this has taken, and it's still going on. So I just note that I'm very disappointed how it's been handled.
Thank you, Councillor Nina.
Yeah, well, Councillor Reynolds rewriting history a bit there, because that's what's this about, Councillor Reynolds. We put money into the UTC building, and that's our money, that's our council's, our residents' money, into this building. And what we said was, because EACT, as you said, failed unfortunately, and EACT are a private enterprise, they're not a public sector one. We took over the facility, and therefore what we said was, for the community, we said, okay, you can have the building as long as we can use the community can use your playing fields after hours. And that's all we asked for. Now, I don't think you should blame this council necessarily for the fact it's taken this long in negotiations. Now I would just agree with you, just to say do that, that's done, sign the paper now. So we've done very well in this council to look after our community by putting facilities there in the evening at the same time as providing EAC with a brand new building for the pupils. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie, please.
Thank you. I'm not standing here to apportion blame. I'll do that if you like.
No, please don't.
But it strikes me that, we've handled this, and by we I mean EDC as a whole, has handled this exceptionally badly. We have had very bad press in the Daventry Express. We've had a great deal of anger amongst parents. Now, it may be the case that they have misunderstood. It may be the case that there is no reason for it. But that doesn't get away from the fact that we somehow, in terms of our management of what is happening, in management of our publicity, we haven't done well in this. And I'm therefore just a little unhappy about saying that, look, that what we're doing now is we are simply leaving the final say with officers. I think that we as a council ought to say that we ask our officers to negotiate in the terms that are laid out here, but whatever the final decision is, that this council should sign it off as a council. And I would therefore like to move as an amendment that the decision be brought back to the next council meeting, so that it is a council decision and not one that we merely delegate. I don't suggest delegation on the grounds that it is necessarily a decision that has got huge financial implications, but it is acquired within Daventry town and amongst parents and is attached to the schools. It has required a political significance, and I think that it is just important, therefore, that we as a council deal with it.
Councillor Rich, do you want your amendment? Because if your amendment is...
I would...
Yes, just...
Chairman, I don't think actually that's an amendment. To me, that's negating what's being
Yeah,
asked for.
Yes, exactly.
So I think it's a case of voting against this, if that's what's wanted, and then a
Yes.
subsequent proposal will come forward.
Can I just respond to that, Chairman, mate? Councillor Ritchie, on one hand, and Councillor Reynolds saying how long it's taken, but Councillor Ritchie is actually proposing something that's going to take longer still. And I just think the reality of this is, remember right when it all kicked off, there's a lot of misinformation was put out around the reasons for our request. And it was actually, because we are the taxpayers of the whole district, it's not just the town, it's the whole district here, and it's our taxpayers' money that's gone into this project. Fine, no problem with that, because we supported that. Unfortunately, the UTC failed, no fault of this council, and what we wanted though, because it's still our asset, we wanted to make sure that the facility could be used for education, but at the same time we got the double benefit of getting the community to use the facilities in the evening. And that's exactly what we arrived at now, Chairman. Thank you.
So I think, Councillor, would you like to summarise?
Yeah, I take on board Councillor Rich's comments, but I tend to agree. You know, we can look back and we can talk down things and that's it. I believe we've now got a solution here where we can move forward. But I'd rather look forward than move backwards and perhaps cause further delays. So that's where I'm coming from on this. I think we should stick to this recommendation and that's it.
Do we agree with the recommendation?
Agree.
Thank you.
I'm not proposing a question. I like to challenge the advice that's been given by the monitoring officer. We have a recommendation in front of us here. We have a motion in front of us, and I am proposing an amendment to that. It is not a negation of the motion.
So I overrule. Thank you.
Sorry?
I overrule as chairman. Thank you. You can see it. SG 33, 18, sorry, no. We agree that's not. 33, 18, 0, including at 16 CA staff, please. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. About 2 years ago, the rear gardens of 60 to 66 Haystack were flooded. As a consequence of that, the council carried out certain works to ameliorate the problem, construction of a bund, the extension of the ditch and so on. In Easter of this year, which was particularly wet, the problem reoccurred again. And the reason this reoccurred is because the ground is saturated and it's coming up in like springs everywhere. So the council has now decided that it needs to do something more than the smaller jobs that were done before and extend the ditch at the rear of the property so that it goes into the county council's ditch on the Welton Road. There'll be a little bit of culverting as well to be done. Permission will be needed from the county council and probably one or two other minor commissioners as well. So the council has an acknowledged liability on this one. So the recommendation before you to speed things up before Councillor Howard speaks, recommendation of the capital programme entry for £33,000 is created from capital reserves. I think that should be to extend and improve the ditch to the rear of 60 the Haystack Daventry. And I beg to move that recommendation.
Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you, Chair. This has been going on for quite a while. It's not just 60, it's actually 4 residents. I would like to support this and second it. 4 families have had loads of turmoil over the last 2.5 years. I know there's quite a lot of work been carried out, so I would like to thank the officers involved for standing by us on this and trying to help the residents. I know it's a lot of money, but the amount of money that has already been spent is also moved into other areas, so we haven't spent what we had in the past. So this new money will actually make it a better life for the existing residents of Four Families down there. So I thank you very much, and I hope those get supported tonight.
Do we agree to the recommendation?
Great.
AG 331804. James again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Daventry District Council has a responsibility to maintain the Weedon Close churchyard and then to recharge that as part of the special expenses budget for the parish council. It has been noted though that there are some very serious works of repairs that need doing at Weedon Close churchyard, including repairs to the boundary walls and also repairing the cracked pathways. Health and safety reasons apply there too. So, before I ask Adam Brown to come in, the recommendation here is that the special expenses reserve budget for Weedon Churchyard is increased in the 2018 to 19 financial year only by 50,000 for works of maintenance to be recovered with a normal allowance for staff time and overheads in the following special expenses charge. Now, of course, £50,000 is quite a lot of money for parish council to come up with, spreading it away in one go, and particularly a parish council that's had its fair share of accidents this last year or two, which it has had to pick up the tab. So it may well be that Daventry District Council recovers that gradually over a period of years. As far as I'm aware, those discussions have yet to take place. Thank you.
Would you like to clarify Simon Gordon, please?
Chairman, if I may, just a couple of points of clarification. The special expenses charge is not levied on the parish council, forgive me, Councillor James, but on the parish. It's a direct charge by this council, and the portion of time over which it will be taken from the parish, if it's agreed today, will be set in the budget, which you will set in the forthcoming budget cycle.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm very happy to second this, and I can testify to the necessity of the works that are proposed to be carried out. Weedon has a fantastic church, but the boundary walls and the paths are in dire need of repair, and I do hope that this council will liaise closely with Weedon Parish Council to determine precisely how long the special expenses budget will be paid back over. I can reassure Councillor James, however, that by virtue of having come to an agreement with the MOD, Weedon Parish Council has slightly less pressure on its budget, although I take some Barrow's point that we're not levying this on the Parish Council.
Do we agree to the recommendation?
Great.
Thank you. AG 341801. Councillor Morgan.
I'm conscious of time, particularly I think we've got members of the public who are probably waiting for the last agenda item. This agenda item actually relates to this building standing. And it's all about really underpinned by public concern about fire and health and safety. And very simply, it's to basically recommend a resolve that a capital budget, 590,000 be created from capital reserves to fund works to the Lodge Road offices to address deficiencies identified in the fire risk assessment. That was on page 807 of the strategy group. And linked out there should be no requirement for approval under financial regulation 461 prior to entering into commitments to these works. The fact of the matter is on this one, we have to do the work. We have to be safe and compliant. We have to make sure members of the public are safe here and make sure the workers are safe here. It's a non-negotiable piece of work. It's laid out in strategy. It consists of a number of pieces of work which also enable accessibility and keep people safe. And I'd like a second on that, please.
Councillor Schneider, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to second this, Chairman. This will be of benefit to everybody, both staff and visitors, including members of the council. and some of the works involved will be of particular benefit to those who are less mobile. But I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Councillor Dutt, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I speak not as Labour councillor, but as a former finance guy over in the Ford Works. This building must be subject to a limited future with the unitaries coming along. What are we going to be doing with it? Therefore, I question whether it is actually appropriate. I mean, £590,000. In my Ford world, that would be called $1 million. You'd never get approval for that. Is it appropriate for doing it now? Does it have to be done now? Can we not defer it? I would sort of put a caveat on what I'm saying is you do not miss members of the public or the employees here, absolutely. But I'm just concerned that the amount to be spent and being spent in the near future.
Councillor Morgan, please.
Yeah, Chair. You can imagine nobody wants to spend that kind of money. It's not a luxury purchase. I think there are things we'd prefer to spend money on that we spoke about already this evening. However, the fact of the matter is, we don't know yet quite the future of the building. We don't know how long we might have to use the building. And actually, we addressed the very point on page 808, and it's a very good question. I think the fact of the matter is, we have to spend money to make sure we're compliant, keep the members of the public and workers and businesses safe. I'm thinking that you answered your own question. So it has to be done. We have a duty to perform it, to keep safe, and therefore we have to. It's unfortunate, I think, in that respect, but we have to go ahead and spend the money to make those things. Thank you.
Do we agree? So
Agree.
LJ 34-1802.
Thank you, Chair. This one is Treasury Management Annual Report for the previous year, 2017-18. And very simply, this is all about a short report which really we discuss again, page 811, that strategy and talks about the way overall the money is managed. Very interesting to see that from Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Richard. They both actually have heard them quote that we run this council prudently, and this really is a very short document which basically tests the fact that we're compliant with the requirements and just summarises our position. And I'd like to put this to thank you, Chair.
Do you have a second? Councillor O'Neill.
Second, Chairman.
Do we agree with the recommendation?
Agree.
SJ 34-1803. Councillor Morgan again.
Thank you, Chair. This is the final one on these committee recommendations this evening. Thank you. So this is page 819 of strategy. As you all know, it was a very long meeting. Basically, here there are 3 recommendations. So the capital budgets that require slippage across the 2017-18, 18-19 capital programme have been made, and the growth bid is approved. Some of the growth bids have already spoken about this evening, and we've already agreed on those. When the officers are actually out there, of course, some of that took place. And number 2, the SIL programme will be updated as set out in the Appendix B. And finally, revised projections and growth bids be incorporated into the MTFP, which is of course the medium-term financial plan document. And really this is about dealing with the new vision and the new reality of the council as we go forward, but still making sure that we operate prudently and spend our money wisely. And I'll put this to the council.
Do I have a second?
Agree.
Councillor Osborne.
Yes.
You second?
Second, Chairman.
Yes. Do we agree with the recommendation?
Agree.
Thank you. Now, item 10, review of the Constitution. Mr. Councillor Daventry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. 235 pages. I think I could probably say there's 3 of us in the room that have read it, all of it. I do encourage every member to read some of it, and if I can give you some pointers, can I point you in the direction of section 6A, sections 14 and 20. When you read them, you'll know why I've pointed you in that direction. Of the paper, 4.1 lists the substantial changes that are proposed to the Constitution. This is an annual process. It does feel quite tedious at times, but it is an incredibly important document to enable the Council to operate and run. It is on that basis, Madam Chairman, I put the motion to Council.
We have a second.
Yeah, I'll second.
Councillor Anshande, do we agree with the report?
Agreed.
Oh, Councillor Ritchie.
I'm not rising to disagree, but I just have a little point which I would like to give clarification. At the bottom of 99, there was a suggestion that I didn't think that further changes would be appropriate. I was grateful for the opportunity to meet with the monitoring officer, and I think that some points that he has made in this paper in clarification are much needed. I wouldn't like anybody to have the impression that I feel that as a result that the Constitution is now a satisfactory document. I did, however, feel a certain sense that as we were on the Titanic, that some of the deck chairs might as well remain where they are for the next couple of years. And I probably, if you change that word appropriate to simply may, it would be more accurate.
Chairman, I think it doesn't matter for my purpose. I wrote the report. Not matter for my purpose. The recommendation before you is what you need to think about. Deal with that. I'm happy to take the points. At the end of the day, we had a constructive meeting. So I think that's the important part.
Councillor Lomax.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question. Page 101, non-material amendments to the Planning Commission. Can I receive an assurance that parish councils will still be notified of such non-material amendments?
Taylor, please.
Through you, Chairman, no, the parish councils are not notified of non-material amendments. By their nature, they are not material, and we don't go through a consultation process.
Councillor Lomax, you have your answer. Do we accept?
Agreed.
Councillor Griffith?
Well, here we go again.
A bit shorter this time, please. Because
Well, I'm not going to repeat this,
5 minutes.
and that bit's all about the motion. So I would just draw your attention to the stakeholders statement. I hope you will agree it. Our staff need to know where they stand, and I could repeat everything that's gone before, but I think we have given this subject proper and due attention, and I would ask you all to support it. Thank you, Chairman.
Do you have, do we agree? Seconder, Councillor Osborne, do we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor David James. For the disposal of 32 houses, little more than a fifth.
Yes, in July 2016, the council resolved that it would sell the 32 properties that it had built for private rental as part of an ongoing series of asset acquisitions. In February of this year, when the matter came up with the February councils, there was a bit of a hoo-ha about this, as some of the tenants made very profound and serious objections to the sale of the properties. As a consequence of that, it was decided to refer the matter to the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee. And indeed, a task panel was set out by Scrutiny and Improvement to look at it. In particular, how the properties were marketed to the tenants, and to make a recommendation as to selling the properties or not. Since then, of course, there have been a number of developments which has caused some of us, at least, to have second thoughts about this, because we may not be here in a couple of years' time as Daventry District Council. We may be part of a unitary of some sort or other, or unitaries, or we may not. We don't know, but the probability is that we will be. So, selling these properties, given that we might not be here 2 years down the line, is really a pointless exercise. What benefit would the residents of Daventry District get from realising an estimated sum of about £6.608 million? We wouldn't have time to come up with other schemes to spend the money on. So we would merely be building up financial assets for eventual takeover by some other authority that emerges from the actual the county council and district council. The scrutiny committee reported an interim report on the 19th of June this year, and they came up with a recommendation that it no longer proceeds to sell these properties. And of course that is an extremely reasonable opinion to come to in the circumstances of the uncertainty that's been caused to the tenants up there, the uncertainty of our future as a local authority as well, and the fact that what do we want the money for? You know, are we just going to hand that over so that it can pay down some of the huge debts that any successful authority inherits, in which case 6.608 million is a pebble in the ocean, and I think that's a reasonable assumption. So there's no point in it. So we have a recommendation from scrutiny and improvement, and I think we have to deal with that recommendation first before we proceed to this resolved item.
Chairman, it's exactly the same recommendation. The report before you says to consider the recommendations, you've duly outlined them.
Yeah.
It'll be fine to take this as is.
Right, I'll propose that, and then I'll ask Councillor Brown to speak to those. Thank you.
Councillor Brown, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Councillor James, and thank you, Madam Chairman. With your permission, I'd like to reserve my right to speak until the debate has been exhausted.
Councillor Olga.
Yeah, thank you. This was very emotive. What was really impressive for me was the residents that came and spoke. There were some very good reasons why we would go down this direction, but on reflection and circumstances I believe, have brought us to the right decision. And I'm most of all absolutely made up for the residents that they will be retained in their homes, and I'm happy to support this with a glad heart to me. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie, and then Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chair. I obviously support from what I've said in previous meetings, I obviously support the recommendation that we don't at this stage
so
sell.
Could we pause? It's 9:15. Would you like to carry on? Agreed. Thank you.
I support the recommendation that we don't sell, even if my reasons for not selling might have been something quite different. However, we have got there. What worries me is the second paragraph on page 114, where it states that the committee, I think that's referring to the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee, has therefore discharged its obligation. The sale of the houses was an issue. It was the issue that triggered a much bigger issue of how tenants were then being affected, about the implications for people who had actually sold their homes on account of letters received from this council, the sense of unfairness, the huge concerns that exist, with quite a lot of circumstantial evidence of the homes originally having been mismarketed to the extent that that some have been contemplating a legal action against this council. I feel in those circumstances that yes, let's agree that we don't sell our homes, but as has been reported, this was the basis of an interim report from the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee, and there are other issues that have still got to be explored, and I hope that there will be further recommendations that will then be brought back to a future meeting of the Council.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, kind of similar. Again, I'm happy to support this motion, partly because I never agreed with the idea to sell the homes in the first place. I was a little bit disappointed in the tone of how the motion was presented, in that what's the point in selling it to make a profit when other people are going to get the money? In reality, we're talking about people's homes and people's lives here. I'm also disappointed in the fact that it's taken this long to get to this resolution. And there are residents who've already gone through the process of uprooting their families and moving homes to get there. So I also feel that we owe these residents an apology for this period of time and what we've actually put them through with the uncertainty.
Councillor Reynolds, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this has been an awful situation for the tenants involved. I was on the council at a time when this scheme was in place, and I was led to believe that these were long-term rentals. When this came about, I actually got in touch with Councillor Chris Long and asked him if I was correct in believing that, and he said, yes, Councillor Randall, you were. So I was very pleased that I asked him to make contact with Councillor Brown so that he could give him as much information as he could, because he was at that time financial portfolio holder. So I knew that he would have more information than the majority of us within this council. So I'm very pleased that he got in touch, and he went along to the meeting that you held. I know the residents were very grateful for that afternoon, particularly because I know you were in there for many hours. And listened and took on board all what they had to say. It's been extremely distressing for every single one of those residents, the ones that have already moved out and the ones that are still, their whole lives have been in limbo. And I think it's been an absolute awful situation. They received a letter initially to say that they were looking at selling the houses, but it would not affect them at all. I saw that letter, and if I'd received that letter, I would not have been worried. But then to have received another letter to say effectively that they could all be made homeless, it was awful. So I would like to apologise on behalf of this council to every single one of you to say how sorry I am for all the distress that you have been put through. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Adam Brown, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll just, if I may, with Councillor James's permission, recap the debate. I know it's usually his prerogative as the proposer. Just touching on Councillor Rich's comments regarding our having discharged its obligation to the council. I concur with him to an extent. I do believe that we still have further obligations to fulfil in terms of considering the other aspects of the report. Councillor Ramsey mentioned the length of time it has taken to get to this point. And that actually was a determining factor in our decision to treat the report on the night as an interim report. There was a large amount of information that came to our attention very late in the day, but I took the conscious decision that we needed to make the most of what we had to date in order to come to at least a principal conclusion on behalf of the residents. Councillor Ramsey is also entirely correct in saying that we seem to have overlooked the human element in all of this. The report is an economic report, so it quite rightly focuses on economic matters. But I think part of the reason for coming to the conclusion was that it simply wouldn't have been worth the needless disruption and distress to residents to conclude that we should proceed with the sale of the homes at this time. There simply wasn't enough benefit to people generally to force through the sale of the homes and to cause that amount of distress to the tenants and the disruption to their lives that would entail. So I am absolutely delighted that we've reached this stage. There is further work to be done, and I look forward to bringing the full and final report to Council. But I sincerely hope that the residents who have cooperated fantastically with me to date and with Councillor Ritchie are satisfied at least with this first conclusion. And I would also like, quite unusually for me, just to pay a little tribute to the Labour group, because actually we've reached this point today because they brought to Council a very well worded, very well thought out motion back in February highlighting the concerns of residents. And Councillor Miller on that night said that the amount of residents in attendance in the Council chamber was democracy in action. But actually I think the role of our opposition in highlighting their concerns was also democracy in action. And I hope that our decision to pause, listen, scrutinise and eventually improve the policy of this Council is a very ample demonstration of that principle.
Thank you. Councillor James, would you like Councillor Brown to finish on that high note?
Yes, shall I read out the resolution? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll finish on that note.
And there is no other business. Thank you.